I don't know how often you think about the cask whiskey you sip a dram. I don't know how often you consider it. I don't know how much it matters to you, how much flavour that it imparts, and all of these crazy things. For me, I think it's more of a geeky thing. I think it's something that you think about a lot more when you get a bit more further on in your whiskey exploration journey. That might be the case. And I suspect that the whiskies that brought you into whiskey would have at least partly relied on the flavour impact and the depth and richness of a sherry cask, or certainly something bold and striking. However, and it's a personal preference, I have to remember this, but for me, and for some time now, it's always been about bourbon. I chase bourbon. Refill, yes. A decent age statement, yes, but first fill too. And as I look at the official core ranges from distilleries today, sometimes I wonder why there isn't more fanfare made about the humble little bourbon cask. That's what we're gonna spend our time talking about tonight. I'm looking forward to it. I missed you last week, and I'll see you all in a second. Hello, whiskey folk. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Thursday night. I shouldn't be too rusty. I only missed 1 week last week. I had to take a wee break. It was the school holidays and it was a wee family trip up the west coast of Scotland. And a lovely time it was too. We were out in the middle of nowhere, wilderness spaces and things like that. And it felt very, very peaceful. Our accommodation was in Oban. So that was quite a busy wee spot, plenty of restaurants and things. But outside of that, I managed to relax and spend quite a bit of time away from whiskey, let's say, despite the fact that our accommodation was literally about 20 steps from Oban Distillery. No, I did not tour it. um, I I needed to take the break because some of you may be aware of just how absolutely crazy and intense this time of the year is. It kind of coincides with the nights getting darker, the clocks changing. It really kind of feels like whiskey season accelerates a little bit for me. And certainly it does when it comes to the workload. And of course, I think you're all aware that that's got so much to do with the Online Scotch Whisky Awards, which is going out on Saturday this weekend. In 2 days, Ralphie and I will be getting together with a horde of blockbuster guests to bring you the winners for 2025 across all 9 categories. And in the background, that's taken up most of my focus. I'm on emails, I'm on the phone, I'm messaging, I'm building up the kind of structure and the flow and who's going to appear at what time to do what. So it's pretty intense. As if I need a wee bit more. It's also that time of year that hundreds of you, are literally hundreds actually this year, are descending upon Glasgow for the annual Whisky Festival weekend. Now, the Whisky Festival itself is on the Saturday, of course, but on the Friday we all gather. There's an event that I'm hosting on the Friday. It kicks off earlier in the day with a Barflies exclusive tour over at Glasgow Distillery. Then there's my event. Then we'll have some dinner together. There's a kind of showing of the Water of Life movie over at Grosvenor Theatre in the West End if you're interested. We roll into the Saturday. That's obviously get your breakfast in you and fill your belly for the craziness of the festival itself. And then after that, we all go for another spicy dinner to kind of fortify ourselves again and have some fun time socializing together. And then on this Sunday, probably the thing that I look forward to maybe more than I look forward to just welcoming all of you and seeing all the faces and things like that. But the Sunday's quite a nice event, and that's me hosting you all in Glasgow for the annual Aqvavitae Blind Challenge. I'm really looking forward to it this year. I can't wait. Now that we're just a week or so out, Most of the jigsaw pieces have fallen into place. There's one or two more, just need a little nudge to happen. But we'll make it work and we'll have a fantastic weekend. I'm looking forward to it. I say all that to let you know that this topic was always in my mind. The whiskies that I was going to share with you have completely changed. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's an interesting thing. I think that it's just a measure of whiskey season again that we're in right now. There's new whiskies coming onto the market, and quite a few of them fit this topic absolutely perfectly. So it would be a shame not to share these with you tonight. I always like to uncork some bottles on the vPub. But that's why I haven't put too much effort into this. So I've got the original bullet points that I put down. My original kind of thoughts are still intact and I haven't expanded on it. I guess I'm just softening you all up for a bit of a lazy vPub, but I don't think so. Hopefully there's going to be enough that we can discuss and I can share with you. Normally, I would not do a vPub before the Online Scotch Whisky Awards just because of the workload. But I took the break last week and I feel like two weeks of no vPub at this time of year. No, the vPub had to go out. So I hope you don't mind. I'm looking forward to hanging out with you and talking about what has become my favourite. It's not the only whiskey that I enjoy, far, far, far from it. But my preferred, my first choice, my kind of the majority of the time I reach for a dram of whiskey these days tends to be focusing tends to be reaching for something that's probably spent its life in a bourbon cask. I wonder if you're the same. In fact, I don't need to wonder because I actually put out a wee poll to all the patrons out there, and I'll share that with you in a second. I'll share you the results of that poll because I wanted to know how unique I was in having that as my preference. Or I knew for a fact I wouldn't be unique, but how many of you would be in agreement with such a thing, or how many of you probably have got preferences elsewhere. But before we get into all of that, before we get into all the housekeeping and all the kind of storytelling and nonsense and uncorking tonight, I'm going to do what we always do and jump in to welcome some of you beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated barflies. I hope you're all doing very well. I hope you're comfortable. I hope you've got something nice in the glass. You might be surprised to hear that I don't have a bourbon cask whiskey in the glass. I actually have bourbon in the glass. To welcome you in tonight, I've poured myself, if we talk about the topic, let's talk about the source, where these casks originally come from. And it had no mention in the Oswas this year at all, but in years gone by, Wild Turkey has not only been nominated, but it's had some success winning as well. And it just so happened that that's the one that I reached for tonight. Anyway, welcome everyone. It's brilliant to have you. Cheers. Scroll back a wee bit and I'll try to pick up as much orange as I can. What I mean is if you're typing Aqvavitae or at Aqvavitae, please remember the V in aqua, the aqua part. It highlights orange to me and it's easier for me to pick up your comment like Gary Fields right now. Evening, Roy. Looking forward to Glasgow Whisky Festival weekend. Me too, buddy. I think you're coming up from down south, aren't you? It'll be the first time that we've met, Gary, so it'll be nice to shake your hand finally and welcome you to Glasgow. My pal from Edinburgh, Gav's Drams, a superstar, is in here tonight as well. He's saying hello. And Tim Pills is saying, evening, Roy, great topic tonight. Thank you, Tim. I'm glad you're looking forward to it, and I'm glad you think it's a decent thing to dedicate a vPub to. Derek McGrainer, my pal from Ireland, is saying, good evening, folks, Aqvavitae. Good evening, Gaffer. Wonderful to have you in, Derek. Hope you're comfy, fella. I know you're coming over for the Glasgow weekend, aren't you? Whiskey Novice Jim, he's saying, cheers, Aqvavitae. Have a good one and see you soon. One of the first things that we have to do is to say thank you to our superstar pal, Jim, Whiskey Novice, who looked after everyone during the break last week. While I was taking a break. It wasn't a break for you guys. And thankfully, it wasn't a break because Jim stepped up to the plate. And I thought he brought a fantastic topic. He was covering everything to do with regionality. And while he talked about regionality in Scotch whisky, and that was the majority of the discussion points of that night, he also started to talk and touch upon the potential for regionality and things like that, and other spirit categories such as Irish whiskey. And he finished off with a brutal quiz that I almost scraped through, but I didn't quite make it. I almost got there. It was a cracking night, Jim. Thank you very, very much for looking after the barflies, buddy. You're always a star, and I love having you around. Looking forward to seeing you in Glasgow. Cheers, Jim. Michael Wood is here. Good to see you, Michael. He's joining live tonight. He's saying Aqvavitae and everybody. I can't type, but it's nice to be here tonight. I understand some people enjoy Michael just sitting back, reading the chat and listening. Feet up, relaxing. Some people are superstars and skilled at typing and have multiple discussions while they do it all. Mike Molasses is here. Good to see you, Mike. He's saying, Aqvavitae, I have the new bottling in my glass. He's talking about the new Aqvavitae bottling. I cannot believe how quickly Royal Malt Whiskey's got it to me. Mike, I hope you're loving it. It's absolutely on topic for tonight, so I hope nobody minds if I pull that out a wee bit later and share it with you all. Fastcraft is saying, good evening, Roy Aqvavitae. Funny, in my German state, the autumn holiday week is this week. That's why Luna is travelling too. Luna Aaron, you're talking about class, aren't you? He's saying, I've never had much of a sweet tooth, hence bourbon is preferred. That's interesting. I find bourbon, you're talking about bourbon casks, of course, but I find bourbon as a whiskey category, as a whiskey style, a profile, one of the sweetest whiskies that exist. But I get your point that on ex-bourbon matured whiskies, unless it's super active first fill, we can always find that the spirit, the raw spirit, can have a louder voice, and the sweetness of the bourbon cask is attenuated. I think that's what you mean, class, right? Bruno Martins is saying, it's always good to take a break, Aqvavitae, but we missed you last week. Glad to be here again tonight. Bruno, thank you for missing me. That means a lot, buddy. Hey, I missed you guys too. I missed you too, Bruno. Thank you, fella. Gene Kelly is saying, glad you picked this topic. I feel like bourbon matured whiskey is the heart and soul of Scotch single malt. Looking forward to tonight's topic, not to mention the Oswas and Glasgow Whisky Festival. There's just so much happening, Gene, so you can maybe understand why I'm complaining about workload again. I always do it this time of year, don't I? I wouldn't have it any other way. I absolutely love it. Finally done is celebrating being a member of the Barflies for 22 months. He's saying, good to hear you had a chance to relax, Roy and Slangia. Thank you, finally done. Thank you for your support as a barfly. And he's also been joined tonight by Craig Walters, who signed up to join the Aqvavitae Barflies. Craig, I don't think I've mentioned you before, but along with finally done and yourself, you're part of the barflies who sign up through the YouTube membership and keep all my content completely ad-free. In return, I give you access to the ad-free thing is a big advantage. I really dislike ads on YouTube, and when I come across content that is ad-free where they've chosen not to monetize through ads, it's a big relief. I've actually signed up for Premier membership on YouTube now just because of the sheer amount of content that I watch. But I find that if I'm logged in a different browser or watching it somewhere else and the ads come up, I get frustrated. So I don't want ads. I can't control the ads or the content that's next to it. But thankfully, you guys mean that I never need to go to Google cap in hand to share ad revenue with them. You guys take that off the table. You keep it all completely ad-free. In return, you get the wee channel-themed emoji and loyalty badges and things, but it's not really much. I just thank you all. Thank you so much. My friend Kiwi Gore has brought me a dram. Kiwi Igor, down in New Zealand, is saying, Roy, that Glasgow Aqvavitae made it to New Zealand. I'm in love. Thanks for another amazing release, and have a great vPub, everyone. Kiwi Gore, I think it's fantastic that it's made it there that quickly. I'm doubly excited that you're enjoying it, because the amount of money that you've invested in getting it shipped across there is not inconsiderable. What I will say is that Royal Malt Whiskey's export ex-VAT, so the retail price that you see on the website, you can remove 20% from that before you go adding on your shipping and your local taxes and duties and whatever it may be. Robert Primo, my pal Robert, so good to see you, buddy. How are you keeping, fella? He's saying, enjoying what I believe to be a refill bourbon cask gem from the Good Spirits Company. I bought it this summer. Every time I pour it, I think of you and Scotty Monroe and how much you all would appreciate it. Cheers from Houston. Robert, it's fantastic to see you in, fella. It really is. I wonder which one that is. One of the Glasgow Good Spirits Company's own bottlings, maybe? My kind of vPub, says Jimmy Legg, celebrating being a member of the Barflies for 6 to 8 months. He's saying, finally, proper whiskey. Do we not normally talk about proper whiskey, Jimmy? It's brilliant to have you in, buddy. I hope you and Angie are doing great. Brian M is saying, hi, Roy. Would Tobermory 12 fit tonight's category, as it is aged in ex-bourbon and virgin oak, and virgin oak is needed to make bourbon? Sure. In profile and flavour, it's not going to be far away. But virgin oak, no. But bourbon hasn't been anywhere near that. So you virgin oak can be any kind of cask, can be European, it can be American, it can be, if it's not had a previous incumbent in it before, it's just been toasted in the case of European typically, or in the case of American oak, it's been charred, and that's it. There's been nothing else in it before. I'm speaking about specifically whiskies that have been matured in casks that have matured bourbon before. Nice to have you in, Brian. David Hong is saying, he doesn't say much, he doesn't say anything, but he's always generous in buying me a wee dram. So Brian, thanks to you, and David Hong, thanks to you as well. Cheers to you all. Whiskey Total has just signed up for Aqvavitae Barflies as well, but I noticed that you've got a different coloured barfly, so you've been a member in the past, and it's nice that YouTube gives you that continuity as well, so you can pause your membership and click back on in and out and still build up your loyalty over time. The loyalty just means that the barfly changes colour a wee bit. David Evans is celebrating being a member for 67 months. No bells and whistles, just proper whiskey. I'm going to touch upon that a wee bit. Because there are a few. It's not that it's a myth, but there is this idea that ex-bourbon is always going to be spirit forward, and it's always going to let the spirit shine. And there's a lot of truth in that, and you'll hear me using language that kind of agrees with that tonight. But you're also hopefully going to hear me talking about some examples where that's not the case. It's not always the case. But David, thank you for your support, and Whiskey Total as well. Nice to have you join the Barflies. George P is saying, evening all, evening Roy, Aqvavitae, I'm off work tomorrow, so should be in for the duration for a change. A few bourbon mature drams lined up, including Cork Pop from the Glasgow release. Exciting. George, please let us know what you think about it. I have to be honest, with me, I mean, I loved it when I first got it home and opened it, and it's always that special occasion of opening it up and trying the bottle for the first time and getting to know it and explore it. But I'm going to admit something, and we're going to be talking about this a wee bit later tonight, but this is the bottle that I've already shared with you in the vPub. This is the one I took to Oban on holiday with me. I took this along. I say that I stayed away from whiskey on holiday, but there's nothing worse than being in the mood for a dram, and you're in an accommodation somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and there are no drams, and you know, we were sitting late at night, feet up, sofa, TV on, and it was blissful. And I was pouring a wee dram each night. And I took some recent whiskies away, and only two of them were ex-bourbon, actually. But my Glasgow was one of them. And I found as the week went on, the only one that I wanted to sip was the Glasgow 8-year-old, my own whiskey, which was just, you know, it just feels good that that's the case. When I got back, I opened another one, and this is the one that I've been enjoying since I returned from holiday. You can see I've already got that one past the shoulder as well, and we'll have a wee sip of that later tonight, because there's a good reason to be sipping that tonight. More on that to follow. So let me know if you're enjoying it, George. And Frank is in. He's saying, good evening, barman. Good to have you behind the bourbon matured bar. I know that it's your style of whiskey as well, Frank. You love it, especially if it's got a wee bit of peat in the mix as well, right? Michael would have said, sounds like one giant pea. You sadly can't be there. We'll make it one day, hopefully. Michael, you'll make it one day, and you'll have a fantastic time. And it's interesting you say it's a one giant PU, but it isn't. There's a really cool thing. So if you imagine, Michael, I assume that you're talking about the Glasgow Whisky Festival weekend. A lot of guys are going on a tour beforehand, and they're coming down to Glasgow, or they're arriving in Glasgow and they're going to go off and do a tour afterwards. So they've got these days of whiskey enjoyment ahead of them. The worst thing you can do on any day is have too much and get, as you say, pissed up. It's so much fun. outside of too much whiskey. You can have whiskey, you can use it to help you enjoy the weekend. That's why we're all there and we're all together. But it's amazing how many discussions I have now that we've been doing this for about 7 or 8 years now. It's amazing how many times I have that discussion where people are like, made a mess of it the first year. I had too much. It was a difficult lesson to learn. And now I'm better at it and I get more out of it. And I don't mean to be preachy. We're all adults. We know we don't drink whiskey for to quench your thirst or for effect or anything. We're into whiskey for the flavor, the conviviality, the experience, the thrill of the variety of it. So we're having these tiny pours, but we can easily get caught up in it. And the professional drinkers amongst us, when I say professional, that's just tongue in cheek for somebody that's been caught out in the past. We realize that it's good to just keep things steady, that it feels good to go back to the accommodation, your hotel, whatever it may be, at an appropriate time and get a decent sleep and start again the next day and have more fun and do the same and do the same and same again. And I tell you what, that's when you have the most fun out of the weekend. And I think that we've been very, very good at managing to do that. So it is happy faces, glowing faces, hugs and handshakes and clinking glasses and laughter and tears, and it's just fantastic. But it's always better when we're feeling fresh for the event the next day as well. Michael, I hope I can welcome you one day. Ardnamurchan is in. Good to see you, fella. Saying, feels like bourbon barrel season with Glasgow, Ardnahoe, etc. Releasing loads of these very recently or very soon. You might understand why I've been motivated to talk about this tonight, Barry. Good to see you. Gary saying, I see Ardnamurchan have announced a core range 10-year-old. They have. It's not exclusively bourbon, but we might be speaking about it tonight. A wee spoiler there for you, Gary. I hope you're interested to hear about that. Just as the chat jumps, I hope I wasn't too... That's probably pretty... apologies. The chat has jumped, but I was already way up, so we'll catch up. I'll try and hang out with you as much as I can and chat to you. But Doodle the Drama Arnie saying, I've been up the stairs to carry bricks down for the past hour or so, but certainly an 8-year Glasgow waiting in the garden steps, and you and my headphones keeps me well motivated. That's the bravery of you, Arnie, sitting out in the Glasgow cold October temperatures, right? With a wee Glasgow to warm you up. Good stuff, buddy. Pedro, my friend from Brazil, is celebrating being a member for 30 months in Glasgow release, resting in Germany to be picked up. Good for you, fella. Thank you for picking it up. I hope you love it. And Ian Bruce is celebrating being a member of the Barflies for 29 months. Thank you, Ian, for your support. And you too, Pedro, for 30 months. Henrik Schmidt, Indri Drew, cask strength in Bourbon Cask, even darker than the rare breed. Yes, that's right. Listen, that Indri Drew cask strength is very batch variable. I've noticed some significant colour changes, which is a very encouraging thing. Henrik, I hope you're enjoying it. Carol Crafts is here. That's Big Carl. That's Carol from Adelphi, of course. And he's saying, hey, Roy and Barflies, won't be able to stay too long tonight, but it's a pleasure to be behind the bar for a wee bit. It's been too long. Fella, I'm looking forward to seeing you in Glasgow over the weekend as well. We might be able to hang out for a wee extended period, maybe on the Sunday. Maybe raise a glass together. I hope that that's the case, fella. That's the signal my Glasgow is getting popped now. Good for you, Rob. Let me know what you think. George Ellis saying, when did Bourbon Casks first get used in Scotch whisky? We can talk about that, George, tonight. I'll start off with the history. I say start off, we're already quite a wee bit in, but that's how I'm going to kick things off. Talk about the serendipity of all. Whiskey Weekend Drama Harrow saying, is there an Aaron on the table tonight? Slancha. Harrow, there is not. I've been distracted, as I've already mentioned. So the whiskies that I was able to pick up because I had someone helping me. I went in a good spirits company, or I was able to get it picked up locally, or the Bon Accord. That's how I've been able to get the whiskies for this week. I didn't go out searching. I didn't have much bandwidth for hunting down bottles. So unfortunately, that wonderful... it looks like Aaron's take on local barley to me. It would have been a perfect whiskey for tonight, but I hope that there's other reasons for me to maybe get a bottle of that and bring it to you in future sessions. Sorry, Harrow. Reb is saying, looking forward to your new bourbon barrel hogshead release recommendations. Well, I don't know if there'll be many recommendations tonight, Reb, because recommendations mean that I've been opening these and sitting with them and making me notes and maybe reviewing them and thinking about them in that context. This is going to be a very typical vPub session tonight, where these new bottles that have come onto the market, I'm going to just uncork them and share my first impressions with you. I hope that that'll do you nicely. Elswood is saying, first Glasgow Whisky Festival for me and Andy, not just looking forward to all the drams, but more so meeting up with all the wonderful whisky folk. It's incredible that it's your first Glasgow Whisky Festival weekend. Ryan Sutherland is saying, evening all, evening, hello Roy, that's Ryan from Eight Doors Distillery, right up the top of the country. Ryan, how you doing, big guy? Hope life is treating you brilliantly. How's that whiskey coming on? Anthony Lambert is saying, not a huge Bourbon Cask fan. I like it more when it's blended together with a sherry cask. I wish I was able to get Glasgow, but alas, it's not to be. We'll be at Limburg, though, next year. Anthony, see if you remind me. I'll try to be mindful enough to bring over some Glasgow for you to enjoy. But you would have to remind me before I travelled to Limburg next year. Gav's Ramsey saying Glasgow's about meeting people. Absolutely, Gav, it is. You get it every year. And it's fantastic to see you making your way across the country as well. David is saying Bourbon Casks are best at retaining the original spirit character. And as much as I like a sherry bomb or a peat monster, subtle yet complex ex-bourbon are really growing into me hard. Listen, David, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but you've hit the nail on the head. And a lot of people feel and experience the exact same thing. Finally Done is saying, when we have too much, it's when we forget whiskey is for tasting and not for drinking. That's right. That is right. If you're thirsty and if you find yourself just doing this with your whiskey, switch the container for a bottle of water or a session strength beer, something with a lot less concentration of alcohol in it. Slow down a bit, just find another way to fix the pacing. Because there's just so much whiskey available to you over the course of the weekend, those days, that it can be easy to get caught out. Raphael Nardi is celebrating being a member for 42 months. You superstar, he's saying, just checking in if I'm a member for longer than Pedro. We'll see Pedro and Raphael together on the Oswas. They've put in a wee video vignette as well, fantastic, with their friend Steve O, who I don't really even know. I don't even know if that's how you pronounce his name, but it's great to have you both in, guys. And I can see that you're both matching on the barfly colour as well. Brilliant, guys. Graham Young from Canada, superstar. My pal Graham is celebrating being a member for 44 months and saying, cheers, Roy. Bourbon Casks, always the win, in my humble opinion. Okay, let's get on with things. Let's have a wee sip of this bourbon. This this wild turkey rare breed is where it all started. I mean, not rare breed, but the concept of bourbon. The topic that we're going to talk about tonight all starts here. Normally on a Scotch whisky label, you'll see the words American oak. Sometimes you see the words ex-bourbon matured. First fill casks, first fill bourbon, refill casks. Lots of different ways to describe it. And it's down to the preference of the distiller. It's not the brand, sorry. It's not defined. They don't need to tell you what oak casks it's been matured in. A lot of us can kind of look at the colour of a whiskey and we can work out potentially what the cask makeup is. But what's often the case, especially when it comes to core range whiskies and things, we don't really know. They tend to put a generic statement, or we're used to having a generic statement that just says matured in oak casks, which is just a hilarious statement to put on a bottle of whiskey. But we have to remember that a lot of people that drink whiskey don't know, don't care, are reading that for the first time or understanding that concept for the first time. They don't seem to realise that whiskey is as clear as water when it comes off the still, right? That's the colour of whiskey when it's first made, when, let's say, barley spirit is first made, or grain spirit is first made. And it actually gets this colour from interaction with the cask. Okay, we're not going to talk about artificial colouring and things like that tonight. It's not on the topic roster whatsoever. So we get often treated with, I would say, not enough information. It doesn't need to be on the front label. It can be on the back label. Or you can do it Ardnamurchan style where they put this little QR code, right? I scanned this QR code and you wouldn't believe it, but this is bottle 22 out of many, many thousands. I wonder if anybody else has got a lower bottle number than 22. I was quite surprised to see that. Anyway, it's often not discussed or talked about. Oak casks is what we get. Sometimes when we're being treated to a wee bit more information, they'll tell us that it's American oak casks or ex-bourbon. If it's ex-bourbon, guaranteed that it's also American oak. Makes sense, doesn't it? And that's a wee bit more information. I don't think it would be difficult for producers to say this is made from a marriage of European oak and American oak, sherry and bourbon, or whatever it may be, and small text on the back. But like a lot of things, it's not necessary, so it's not included. I'm going to put my bourbon off to the side as we talk about how it all came about in the first place. Connell McKenzie's in tonight as well. Fantastic. Good to see you in, Connell. Hope you're keeping well. Gordon Burnston is here too. Gordon, looking forward to seeing you. Glasgow Whisky Festival weekend as well. Southside Mystery Malt number 3. Blind tasting last night. Lots of refill bourbon, first fill in the mix, making a very distillate forward tasting without too much big cask influence. Sounds right up my street, Gordon. Hope it went down well. Helen Williamson said very much looking forward to next weekend. And meeting you, Roy. Practice run at the Wales Whisky Festival on Saturday with the Oswas viewing and the premiere. And brilliant. So you've got a festival, you'll come back all rosy-cheeked, tucked up in your premiere in, and you'll be able to watch along. Helen, it's a surprise to me. So for you and Ian, that'll be the first time that we're going to meet. Looking forward to it. Can't wait to see everyone. Breb is saying there are actually a few examples of single malts titled American Oak that are actually ex-sherry casks. Glenrothes American Oak 1995, for instance. It's an important thing that we need to point out there. When we see that statement on a bottle, American Oak, we immediately associate that statement with ex-bourbon. The truth is that European oak is very tightly controlled. It's very scarce. It's very environmentally sensitive in Europe. You tend to buy that type of oak on the tree before it's just because of dynamics that we will touch upon lightly tonight. European oak is you would have to say that use the word scarce in comparison to American oak. And there's a huge reason for that. And it's all to do with availability, accessibility, affordability. It's all to do with economics. American oak is now used for sherry casks. It's far more common to have American oak coming across and being coopered into whatever it is. It could be hogsheads, it could be barrel, but it's more likely to be a butt and then be seasoned by a preferred or partnership bodega in Spain to the exact specification of what the distillery desires. The type of sherry, how long, air dried, kiln dried, scale of cask, all that type of thing. But it will be a sherry cask coming from Spain or other European sources, of course, but it's likely to be American oak, as Reb has pointed out. A dram coming in from Brian, he's saying, I was trying to decide what to pour, and since virgin oak finish doesn't fit tonight's theme, I'm sorry, Brian. I poured a dram of Signatory Vintage Ben Nevis 2014 10-year-old cask strength, matured in a bourbon hogshead. Fantastic. I wonder if that Ben Nevis is one of the 100 proof series. I've actually got one here. I don't think I'm going to need to pour it tonight, but I got a wee bit annoyed that so many of these wonderful cracking value whiskies were coming out onto the market when this was first launched a couple of years back. But it was all sherry cask, refill, sherry. And then eventually, of course, Signatory did what they do, and they were able to bring out a whole host of cracking whiskies from, in this case, this Glenord 2012 first fill bourbon, 57.1% ABV, like they all are. Paid £45 for this banger. A cracking distillery, one of my favourites, Glenord in the Highlands. Massive factory. It's a sort of kind of rude way to talk about it, but they're able to put out great spirit, in my experience. And this 11-year-old was a blinder. You can see that pale colour. Now that comes into things. If you held this up against a signatory vintage 100 proof from a sherry cask, you would have this dark red, copper, mahogany, Coca-Cola colours, right? And it doesn't matter what way you slice it. It doesn't matter how much evangelism you have that flavour is not directly associated with colour in whiskey. The fact is, and it's not just beginners, the fact is that dark whiskey is still very appealing to the eye. Dark whiskey, darker coloured whiskey, is easier to shift and sell, hence the often cynical liberal use of artificial colouring, of which none of which goes anywhere near signatory bottlings, or indeed any of the whiskies I'm going to share with you this evening. These are all going to be natural things. Rick Johnson is saying, cheers and good evening from the Potstilroy and wonderful barflies. You're already in Glasgow. You must be watching your phone. How difficult must it be for you to watch a YouTube video or a stream in the Potstill? Rick, brilliant to have you over. I hope you're doing well. Let's jump right in and grab that Kilkerran 8-year-old bourbon cask matured Aqvavitae, and I'm going to enjoy this one, says Harrow. Fantastic. So many fantastic comments coming in tonight. I'm going to try and keep up as best I can. Jimmy Legg is saying, you look good with a tan too, but I'd rather you naturally coloured. I don't kind of mind these days. There was a time in my life where I cared about having a wee bit of a tan or colour or whatever. Yeah, it's whatever it is. I find that I just adjust the white balance and it can give me a wee tan, Jimmy. That tends to work. Somebody asked, I think it was George P. asked, when did bourbon casks become a thing for Scotch whisky? So the thing I have to talk about is one of my favourite things to talk about in whisky, and that's serendipity. I think it's fascinating to me that this thing that we've come to love and that we view as being this miraculous invention, this pure thing, this traditional thing, this intoxicating, amazing design that wasn't designed at all. It is completely the product of serendipity, the serendipity of, the fact that an oak cask or a wooden cask of any description was simply a container in order to store it and move it from one place to the next. For one man, for one person to be able to move 200, 250, 500 litres of liquid using a barrel, rolling it on its side and rolling it along. But it was a container, it was something to fill, and serendipity had a role to play in that. It actually was discovered very, very quickly, way back in probably 18th, 19th century, that wooden casks could actually make the whiskey taste a whole lot better. Eventually they worked out that chestnut and ash and all these other things were okay, but they weren't brilliant. Oak seemed to be the best thing. Serendipity played a part in defining what whiskey was before any definitions defined what whiskey was. Over time, serendipity played its hand with politics and decisions made at home and abroad, and taxation, and just so many other dynamics that played into shaping what Scotch whisky is today. We're not going to spend too much time focused on all of those anchor points in Scotch whisky's history. Let's just ramp right forward to sometime around the Second World War, just before the Second World War. And we look across to politics that's happening in America. We find that the unions are in negotiations looking for better terms and all sorts of things going on. And one of the negotiations that they come away with that directly affects their product forever, and it is defined and locked in forever, and that is they agree that they will only use a cask once. It's a new cask. Once it's used, for however long it holds that bourbon whiskey in that cask, it's discarded. It's not used again, and that's obviously good for logging, good for the coopering industry. It's good for business. That defines a flavor profile, doesn't it? That defines instantly what that's going to taste like, more or less, forever. So how does that affect Scotch? Well, it does affect Scotch. If you go back before the 1930s, it would be very, very rare indeed for you to be able to find much in the way of a 200-litre standard American barrel coming over to Scotland and being used to mature whiskey. It wasn't really a thing. However, suddenly there were lots and lots, especially post-war. We have to imagine post-war, when all that optimism and financial mobility starts to take hold and people start to live a bit better, and whiskey's growth is doing this. And then it coincides with the kind of Hollywood boom that I like to refer to, where you see people coming home from work and they're pouring their whiskey over rocks in a tumbler, and it's kind of a lifestyle thing, and whiskey is growing and growing and growing. And that's not just Scotch whiskey. That's bourbon whiskey is growing as well in America. And as they only use the casks once, there's lots of inexpensive oak available for the Scotch whisky industry. We're not one to miss an opportunity to pick up something that's going free or cheap or inexpensive. If you imagine the sherry casks that we're using, these sherry casks were built specifically for export more often than not. There are ex-bodega casks and things, but generally speaking, the sherry casks were built for transporting bulk sherry from Spain across the world. And where it was particularly popular was in England throughout the 19th century and into the 20th century. Sherry was a popular drink. And these bulk casks, once they were disgorged and used at the point of consumption, they would be empty. And the Scotch whisky industry would pick these up and fill these too. And that was great. And we had bourbon and sherry alongside each other, living quite happily right up until the 1980s. Politics comes into it again, and Spain decides that bulk sherry will not be exported from Spain anymore. It will only leave Spain as cased goods. That means that instantly you lose access to those transport casks. Literally, instantly, overnight, they're gone. They don't exist anymore. It's quite a thing to have happened. That happened in the 1980s. But serendipity has already got a hand in here. For 20, 30, 40 years, the Scotch whisky industry has been building up its reliance, its stock of American oak, either through American standard barrels, that's a 200-litre cask that's come over here intact, or more likely for a long time, certainly when coopering wasn't as expensive as it is today and shipping was potentially more expensive, they wouldn't ship empty casks. They wouldn't ship air. They would break down these casks into bundles that they called shooks. And then they would be recoopered when they arrived in Scotland. Occasionally, they would be recoopered back to original 200-litre size, but more often than not, they would take usually 5 200-litre shooks and recooper it back into 4 250-litre hogsheads. Sometimes I'm told that it's 4 into 3 and things like that. And it could be the case, but in my head, the maths don't make sense, but it could be true. Regardless, you would end up with one less container, but you would end up with containers that were a bit bigger and more suited to the warehousing and the layout and the logistics required for Scotch whisky maturation. Suddenly, the majority of Scotch whisky quickly became matured in American oak, ex-bourbon wood. Today, through that serendipitous thing, it's crazy. We walk around our warehouses and we take our tours and we look at the shelves of whiskey that we can buy, and sherry is everywhere. You would imagine that the warehouses are full of sherry casks, and that's not the case. The showpiece warehouses have sherry casks. Those big, massive 600-litre Gordos you occasionally, very, very rarely see. Most of them are the 500-litre or so, or butts, or sherry hogsheads, or whatever they may be. But it's sherry, sherry, sherry. And the truth is that's less than 5% of the Scotch whisky maturation stock that you're seeing there. 95% plus. Some people will even suggest that it's higher than that. I suppose it's based on what industry, what part of the industry that they're in, or what organization or company that they work for. It depends on their outlook. It might be that they hardly ever see a sherry cask, and all they ever see is ex-bourbon wood, either barrels or hogsheads. 90% minimum, 95% likely. Some people would say even more than that. What we're saying is that by far the vast majority of Scotch whisky today and for a long, long time has been matured in bourbon casks. So for blends, for the mass market whiskies, for the mass market malts, the majority of these have been matured, in bourbon casks. Sometimes vatted together, sometimes with a finishing taken out of one cask and put in other casks for a finishing period or a secondary maturation, whatever it may be. But they've started their life filled into American wood. Steve Gibson has bought me a dram. He's saying, also known as Springer Ginger. He's saying, Stephen, that might be the first time I've mentioned you. Thanks for all your hard work producing the vPub content and the Oswa preparations. Thank you very, very much, Stephen. That means a lot. And I would like to say thank you for recognising the efforts. It's there for fun. It's there for pleasure. I hope it's got a value to everyone. But it's nice that people enjoy it. Thanks, Stephen. Cheers. The law for bourbon barrels used to be used only once was enacted in 1938. George, absolutely. Right before the Second World War. So, you know, you can imagine in 1938, used once, you can imagine that's when it really kind of started, that from then on in, for however long bourbon was going to be matured for, but certainly post-war, there would have started to be this surplus, this massive amount of stock of inexpensive, very, very cheap and easy to get a hold of American oak wood that was perfect for the Scotch whisky industry. And we did absolutely take advantage of it. I'm going to pour something now. I'm going to pour something that's a wee bit heartbreaking, but it is what it is. This is going to change for me now. Over my shoulder, you can see a selection of whiskies that I just grabbed things off the shelf, kind of random things that jumped into my head that we can look at and say, okay, we know this to be ex-bourbon or very, very forward in bourbon in profile. They might not have it written all across the labels on any of these, but we know that that's the case. We've got the brand new Glen Scotia 12-year-old, 45 quid, fantastic whiskey for the money. We've got a Daffmill here. I think Daffmill shines. I think it's glorious in bourbon. I feel like Daffmill has lost something, especially when it's quite mature from a sherry cask. Still wonderful whiskey, but if you want to taste Daffmill bourbon cask, Glenmorangie, a lot of people would suggest, I would probably be one of those people as well, that they were one of the pioneers at celebrating the flavor profile of ex-American oak, ex-bourbon style flavors with all the coconut and vanilla, the caramels, the toffees, you know, the things that we associate with bourbon. But with Glenmorangie, some of that nice punchy tropical pineapple, fruit, citrus, and things like that coming through as well. Things that are often attenuated a little bit or throttled, I would suggest, if you're using heavy sherry. Glenmorangie was one of the first. Then we've got the all-conquering thing that everyone seems to be loving. Glencadam's 10-year-old here as well. Fantastic. Glencadam, generally the core range, 15, 18-year-old, very, very bourbon-focused. Deanston 12-year-old as well. Not much more needs to be said about Deanston 12. Again, we don't really... There could be the scenario where Deanston 12 occasionally enjoys a wee bit of sherry in the mix. We're not really sure. They don't lean on it too much. I should check actually if it does say very best ingredients from our local area, traditional methods, all the kind of stuff that you tend to be reading on the things, but they don't really lead. Here we go, non-chill filtered and aged in ex-bourbon casks for 12 years. Okay, well done, Deanston. It's in a slightly different font, but they do put it on the label there. So we now know I can completely do a 180 on what I've just said about there may have been sherry used in the past, but anything that's labelled like this, we know that it's all ex-bourbon. I've got a Springbank here, but specifically I want to focus. There are Springbank releases that are exclusively ex-bourbon, 12-year-old cask strength, 18-year-old various releases over the years, all ex-bourbon, but they don't always stick to that. This one here is celebrated, the 5-year-old 100 proof is celebrated, and it's all ex-bourbon casks. And then we finish up here with Bruichladdich. There's lots of Bruichladdich out there that focus specifically on ex-bourbon, whereas a lot of other core range Bruichladdich are going to lean on a wee bit of sherry, a wee bit of wine, and things like that as well. But there are releases out there from Bruichladdich that's fully ex-bourbon. Here's one that I can guarantee you this is fully ex-bourbon. You might recognize this label from a few years back. This was the first ever Aqvavitae Barflies release, and it's heartbreaking to me that I'm going to kill this bottle now, but it's time to go. I had a couple of drams out of this quite recently, so this wasn't opened forever, and there was about this much left in the bottom, and we managed to get through quite a lot of it. But we got through quite a lot of it because I was enjoying just how gorgeous this is. Now, it was gorgeous because of the care that's put into making this whiskey at Loch Lomond. It was gorgeous because it's been aged for 10 years. And it was gorgeous because this particular expression used a wee bit of Chardonnay yeast in the mix as well. For all of those reasons, this made this a fantastic bottle of whiskey. But I put it to you that the reason this was able to shine and sparkle and fizz, all of those top notes, all of that clarity, all of that purity, all of that addictive flavor and texture was enhanced hugely by that ex-bourbon cask. In this case, it was a first fill cask, but it wasn't a heavy first fill cask. It was very, very light touch. Yeah, this went out 54.9, 0.1% below my ideal 55, but that's okay. Sometimes you can't have it all right. I'm going to miss this. I'm going to miss this. I'm going to miss the whole experience. I'm going to miss everything about this. And I think that when we bottled this, I knew that this was the right thing to do. This was going to be the Aqvavitae bottling vibe. Not every release that I do in the future, if I'm permitted to continue to release things occasionally, is going to adhere to first fill, refill bourbon. But you can guarantee the majority will. Maybe we'll have one or two special releases every now and again for a celebration of whatnot or whatever that will not need to lean on such a thing. Just a step change to measure or reflect our whiskey journeys. But I'm going to focus on this. This is my thing. It's where I feel most comfortable. It's where I feel most engaged with the whiskey, more able to make a good call, and just enjoy the whiskey. So if I sit and make notes with this whiskey, nose, taste, finish, texture, whatever it may be, I guarantee you that at least half the notes you could attribute to spirit. Even although this is first fill with a light touch. The term first fill is just a generic way to talk about a barrel that's only had bourbon in it before, so first fill in the context of Scotch whiskey. But there are remarkably wide variations in how active these casks can be. Some of them can give a really, really dark color almost instantly. Other ones can be, you could be in there for 2 decades and it's still sitting a little bit pale. This is just lovely. I love the lemon. I love the hint of limoncello. I love the fizz. The promise of fizz. It's almost like an Alka-Seltzer type thing. A little bit of a minerality, yes, but not quite. It's kind of a tropical fruity fizz thing. I've mentioned limoncello already. I think it's a good thing if you were to nose limoncello. Cheers. 54.9%, yet soft to me. I have one bottle of this left. It's sealed. It's something that'll never ever appear again. It'll never exist again. It's like this was a single cask. More recently, I've been able to put together small batches to make more available so that it can endure and hang around a bit longer. That was always the goal of these things. We've gradually increased the outturns each time. But this is gone now, and it kind of makes me feel a little bit sad that that's the case. I know a lot of you were able to try this back in the day, and it doesn't do anyone any favours for me to be sitting here in front of you and telling you how wonderful it is when we can't get a hold of it anymore. But this is the dram that I'll take up to bed tonight. This is the style of whiskey I was enjoying at the time when I picked it. It was the style of whiskey that I saw that I would like to kind of focus on for Aqvavitae releases in the future going forward. So when we moved from this, we went to Ardnamurchan. We went unpeated, we stripped it right back, we went to refill in that scenario. Two very, very different refills. No provenance as to what they were, previous Adelphi casks, but the difference in colour was almost this. Between these two identical casks, both bottled at 55% ABV. Then we went back to the Loch Lomond project because everybody asked, well, what happened to the cask that you'd rejected? What happened to Michael Henry's cask? So we bottled Michael's cask, and then we bottled the exact same as this, the sister cask that had 2 years more maturation on it. So we had a refill bourbon and first fill bourbon. And we were able to offer that exact same spirit right next to each other. One from refill at 14 years old and one from first fill at 12 years old. Wonderful whiskies again. Then I was able to realize a dream, to be able to work with Francis up at Daffmill and him to let us blend and put things together. First fill bourbon, exact same thing again. The Daffmill has become a fantastic thing to talk about and share with everyone. And then on the back of the Daffmill, of course, another privilege. Very, very recent. I know it took me far too long. I know it took me months too long, but we got it out there in the end, and it's all the better for it. And that's the 6-year-old Ardnahoe first fill bourbon again. And now we arrive at this one. So to all those people that are messaging me saying, Roy, the Ardnahoe's sold out, will that ever come around again? Will it ever come around again? No, it can never exist again. But there will be similar things to it. More on that this evening. This is still available now. And this is exactly what I'm speaking about. This is Bourbon Casks matured. And what's interesting about this is that Glasgow Distillery had never released such a thing before. They'd always had, even their core range would have a little bit of virgin oak in there, other casks in the mix to make up their core range. They're a small batch series, the cask, the playfulness that they would go about to share with everyone, to show how their spirit's developing, to show how it acts and behaves in each different casks. But they never brought out fully ex-bourbon. Eventually a refill cask came out, a single cask to celebrate 10 years, but it was gone instantly. It was fantastic. And I was more motivated than ever to work with Glasgow to celebrate 8 years of the vPub. And look at those big letters right across the front. Bourbon Cask matured. 55% ABV. Of course, I got my way on the ABV on this one. I was very glad for it as well. And I have fallen in love with this stuff. We can talk about what bourbon casks allow the spirit to do. And it is my belief that it's the case. To let the spirit have a voice, even when it's first fill. However, I think if you leave something in first fill for 20 years or something like that, yeah, it starts to get a wee bit tricky, and I think you have to monitor it. We can start to get a lot of kind of green oak and tannic notes coming into things. The citrus, instead of being a sweet and juicy citrus, you start to get a lot of citrus pith, a lot of skin, a lot of the citrus starts to turn, in my view, a little bit more bitter, and that can be interesting, and that can be fun, that can be good, but it gets a wee bit tricky in my experience. The whiskey can get really quite dark, And you can see these dark whiskies that you would swear is a sherry cask, but then you're told, no, it's actually bourbon, it's ex-bourbon, it's first fill bourbon. It's just much more active casks. This is none of those things. This is 8 years old in first fill. The cask is here. There are things that you can taste, that you can enjoy from the cask. But for me, I suspect that we are able to taste the closest thing to Glasgow's spirit, and it's the fruit. For me, it's confectionery fruit, it's lime and blackcurrant, specifically hard candies, fruit pastels, wine gums. So I've just programmed my brain with all of those things before I went into the glass, hoping that I could get it. And it's absolutely there. It's got this cracking kind of, it's because I've labeled it as chili chocolate and I'm looking for it each time, I can find it there. Pepper, cinnamon, nutmeg, and spice. And a kind of a caramel sauce where there's butterscotch type backdrop. But the thing that's forefront is those hard candies, those fruit candies, those fruits. Cheers, everyone. This works very, very well with a wee bit of water, but I have come to love it neat. I love the arrival that's quite disarming with how viscous and thick it is on arrival. And it just coats your palate with all of those fruits that I'm speaking about, specifically confectionery fruits that I'm tasting right now. And then the development runs quite quickly into that chili chocolate. It leaves, and with that kind of chili chocolate thing on the palate, that's its kind of, as it disappears. But the development, you get those kind of almost coconut toffee vibes. So it's almost like the cask is in the middle, but we've got spirit up front and spirit on departure as well. Like I say, I rinsed my bottle of this when I was on holiday last week. I couldn't reach past it. I couldn't easily enjoy sipping something else. I was keen to get a wee dram of this back in the glass again. So there is still some of this left. This is still available, and it's now on public sale. Patrons have been absolutely sated. They were allowed to buy. I think they've lifted the limit on the bottle. I asked or agreed that should happen, so that you can fill your boots now when this is gone. It's gone. Like I say, this is a strictly limited release. It's like everything that's gone before. Once it's gone, it's gone. This is thus far absolutely unique from Glasgow. But in a moment, I'm going to share something else with you. For a completely different reason, asking a favour, I found myself at Glasgow Distillery today. And it's got nothing to do with my project. It's got nothing to do with, it wouldn't be true to say it's got nothing to do with whiskey, but it's a completely different thing. I was there to ask a favour of a person, and that person told me, have you heard of it? I said, yes, I've heard about your new product. And they said, well, would you like a bottle? And I said, yes, as long as I can pay for it. And they said, yeah, we can arrange that. So this is going out to, I am a member of the Glasgow Community Club. I don't know what it's called. So this is coming out to everyone that's a member of that now. And then it goes on public sale in the days or weeks ahead after that. But I want you to look at what's written on this label. Bourbon cask matured. This is a larger scale outturn, official core bottling. This is not a limited edition. This is not going to disappear. This is not going to be here today and gone tomorrow. This is going to join the Glasgow core release. They're extending their core release. They've got their original, they've got their triple distilled, and their peated, PX peated. They've got their 6-year-old port cask that's just been released recently, which people are loving. but this is the one I'm excited about. Of course I am. You can see what I worked with Glasgow to create. So we've got these two things. What's different, this is peated and this is unpeated. What a fantastic opportunity, right? All first fill ex-bourbon. The ABV is slightly different. This one's at 54%, their 8-year-old. Mine is at my preferred 55%, but that's as near as damn it no different. It's still in that sweet spot of ABV for me. It's just a touch. It's really difficult to see if I was to put this behind some white paper behind it. This is just a touch lighter, and I suspect that this is darker because of one very, very interesting thing I'm going to talk to you about in a second. I'm going to open this tonight, but I'm going to do a comparison side by side. And I'm not going to be telling you which one is better, because I know the answer to that before I do it. It's going to be, well, I'll try and articulate it as best I can. I haven't tried it. It'll be an uncorking and a first kind of gut reaction. But I think that's a really, really cool thing. I've worked together with Royal Mail Whiskies and Glasgow Distillery and suggested that would it be a good idea to have at the Glasgow Whisky Festival my bottle alongside this new core bottle so that people could compare the two back to back. Glasgow's going to do that, so you'll be able to ask them to do that very thing at Glasgow Whisky Festival in the coming days. I don't know when this is going to roll out to retail and stuff, this 8-year-old, but I imagine that they would want to release it in advance or at the same time as Glasgow Whisky Festival because they are the head sponsors. Andy Hales is saying, evening from a wet and windy Machrihanish, in for work with a 10-year-old bourbon cask, Glen Elgin and the Glencairn. Thanks for being on theme, Andy. Wonderful to have you in order to saying enjoying that Glasgow 10-year-old right now, along with a Whittaker bourbon barrel. GG Glasgow, I guess he's saying, is lovely. Whittaker, not so much. It's a shame that you're not enjoying that Whittaker. I've got a Whittaker's over there that I do enjoy, Barry. I wonder, the Glasgow 10-year-old, is that the Royal Mail Whiskies Sauterne release? It must be, or maybe it's the refill. Did you manage to get one of the refills? Be very lucky if you did. Stevie O is saying, got it in a glass and get a bit of mint at the end. Aqvavitae, a wee bit of mint. I'll even go one further. Can we suggest it's Fox's Glacier mints? And then that's in theme with the Fox's Glacier fruits that I often get from it, buddy. Good to have you in, Stevie O. Harrow is saying, wow, 8-year-old, and what is the price range? Well, mine is 72. Their core release is out at 57. It's quite a difference in price. I don't think I have to explain probably why the case is to the audience that's in tonight. I hope you probably understand that a core range bottle that's going out to any number of countries for export. It's going to be available on the retail shelves to everybody. This is a product that they've developed in-house as part of their bigger strategy. It's woven into their everyday fabric, and this is a long-term thing going forward, and this is a positioning product for them. This is a bespoke, one-off, a parallel project. All the work that goes into making this is never going to be done again, so they can't kind of recoup this. It's just a one-off thing, a small batch, a very, very small batch. I mean, in Aqvavitae scale, it's big, of course it is, but in Glasgow scale, much, much smaller, much more bespoke thing. I think it's pretty difficult to do projects like this any cheaper than this. However, it is what it is. That was always I went ahead with this project under the knowing that that's what the price was going to be. This one, the core range product, is going to be quite a wee bit cheaper. So there we have it. You'll be able to try these if you're attending Glasgow Whisky Festival, or hopefully at some point in the future in various places, you'll be able to try it side by side. I think it's really, really interesting that that's happening. Greg's Whiskey Guide is saying, very nice, Roy. I hope we see this in France soon because we had way too rare expressions from them imported here. I hope, Greg, get onto your retailers, get onto the importers, get onto your social media, say we need some more Glasgow. hopefully they would appreciate it. Hopefully they've got the stocks to furnish you over there in France. Jimmy Legg is saying, we know which one is better. Jimmy, I don't know. You might enjoy the peated one a wee bit better, no? Libby showed me actually that the best way to do this is just to kind of brute force it, to take the seal off. She's right. She's absolutely right. It's a locking top on Glasgow, so it's almost like a semi-screw top. And once we've got that off, it's a wee bit easier to get there's a tear strip on it, but it's always fussy and fiddly looking for these things to find out where it is. That's a horrible noise in the mic, no doubt. Just going to open that bottle, and I'm going to leave it off to the side. Because it's peated, we'll try it in a wee second. I'm going to put that there to remember it, because there's another wee bottle as well. I want to talk to you now about why I love bourbon casks. And it's a lot to do with whiskey journeys. It's got a lot to do with development. It's got a lot to do with almost like changing seasons and changing preferences. There's a lot of people in the comments when I was talking to people. I haven't shared that poll with you. Actually, I need to share the poll with you to let you see. A lot of people come on and said, it's about the time of year. When I'm coming into the winter time, I tend to be drawn to more kind of darker, moodier, sherry cask styles. Maybe I have a bit more peated whiskey, and I tend to lean to maybe, darker whiskies, more sherry cask maturation and that type of thing. And that makes perfect sense to me. It really does. And then as we come into springtime and it's brighter and summer whiskies, we talk about the Glencadam 10 being a perfect summer whiskey, for example, and things like that. I follow that trend, generally speaking, but not exclusively, not even close to that. I would just say that if you were to imagine a wee bit more than average, I would be following that trend. But still, my preference is ex-bourbon. My preference is often refill, even when it's a sherry cask. My preference will often be a refill sherry cask. And I've started, I think, to work out why. One of the best things about whiskey enjoyment is when you can isolate and talk about and label and articulate different flavors. You don't have to be able to do that. If you can't do that, you can still enjoy whiskey. But it does kind of feel like you're leveling up a little bit. It feels like you're accessing a wee bit more. And it feels genuinely exciting when you're in a situation where you realize that when you weren't at that stage, it wasn't smoke and mirrors, that you can genuinely taste things and sit down and you could write it down. And let's imagine we were writing it down and someone else in a different space at a different time is doing the same thing and writing it down. And the overlap of flavor notes that you get is huge. So you start to realize that it's almost like looking at landscapes or color or whatever it may be. You're able to interpret, this is attractive, this is beautiful, this is red, this is green. That's what it feels like with whiskey. And when you level up again, you can start to say, I think this flavor is coming from the barley. I think this is malty, this is oaty, this is grainy. I think this is coming from fermentation. This is a little bit like banana bread, or this is a little bit like lots of other flavors that you can pick up from the fermentation process. The yeasty notes, the doughy notes, the beer notes, you can understand that it's from that part of the process. And when you start to unlock that and start to separate things from the cask and say, well, this is clearly this cookie trail of flavor notes I'm getting here. The thing that has in common is these are all coming from bourbon casks or sherry casks or whatever it may be, European oak or American oak. And you start to attribute flavors and styles and character with different parts of the process and different parts of the identity of the whiskey. It's phenomenal. But for me, the far more accessible or easier way to be able to do that is when it's bourbon casks. It might be not exclusively like that going forward. It might not always be like that. My changing whiskey seasons, my changing whiskey preferences might continue to develop. I hope it does. and metamorphosize into something that's going to have me looking at everything a wee bit differently. But it's been a long, long, long time now that I've been enjoying all of this. These flavor spectrums, these experiences with bourbon as my sidekick. Ex-bourbon, American oak whiskies, refill or first fill, it doesn't matter. Sometimes we can get things to enhance that experience a little bit. I'm going to be corking a few bottles with you tonight. I've already demonstrated one bottle that isn't even for sale yet, I don't think. It's been on social media only. It's not intended to get you excited or to develop FOMO in people or to have you running out and buying whiskies. I imagine that maybe you'll be keen to pick up one of the bottles that I share with you tonight, but that might be the case, that might not be the case. The reason I'm sharing these whiskies with you is because I'm excited about them. These are the things that I get excited about, and I buy them. And I'm sorry that I didn't buy that Arran cask. I should have been a bit more organised. I should have maybe had it in my hands to share it with you tonight. The Arran Heritage Barley release that they brought out, but I can use it in a future session on the vPub. Here's a Heritage Barley from a different distillery. It seems to be the new trend, right? Springbank were there before a lot of people, you could argue, sure. It's not unique. Bruichladdich do this very, very successfully. Other distilleries do it as well. But here we have a new entry, and we've had it through single casks. But this is an official release now. This is Ardnamurchan's Heritage Barley release. This is cask strength, I believe. It's at 58.2% ABV. There's no age statement on this, but being Ardnamurchan, give that wee barcode on the back a scan, and it'll tell you everything. It'll tell you the age and the profile, everything about all the casks involved in the maturation, and it'll tell you everything else about the production of this whiskey. We love it. Ardnamurchan, we love it. It's another example of how things should be done. It's not leading with it. It's not, this label doesn't look like a lab sample, does it? No, it's something that's quite easy to read, and it's Ardnamurchan Heritage Barley release. Minimum information. If you really want to get geeky, it's accessible and it's available to you. It's not, these things shouldn't be that difficult to do, right? So many QR codes is just a link to the homepage. It's bloody lazy. Anyway, this, I need to remember the price on this. I think this is, I bought this at the Bon Accord, and I bought the 10-year-old at the Bon Accord, and the two of them were 128 quid. One was 60. If I still got the receipt on me. I've got the Glasgow distillery receipt, so I can tell you I paid £57 for the bottle of Glasgow I've just shared with you. I don't know if I've still got the Bon Accord receipt because I'm probably wearing a different pair of jeans. Sorry. Anyway, I think it's 68 quid. 67 quid. I think that's how much this is. This is a smaller outturn, smaller batch release, and it is exclusively ex-bourbon with Golden Promise barley. We're going to finish, we're going to get to the 10-year-old a wee bit later as well, although I'm using up a lot of your time. But these are exciting whiskies, right? These are exciting times. Oh my goodness. Vanilla coconut ice, really cool on the nose, wee whiff of menthol, straight out I always caveat all of these things, these are neck pours. These are always neck pour whiskies, right? Whiskey Weekend Dram Harrow saying no worries. Too many whiskey. Did somebody say Ardnamurchan says Gordon Fraser? Good to see you in, buddy. Harrow, there's no such thing as too much whiskey, is there? Wonderful to have Gordon in tonight as well. Andy Hills is saying, what, no pink sock, lol. Oh, okay, that's a reference to a tasting, hosted an Ardnamurchan tasting where it was The thing that wasn't released yet was kind of covered up. That's absolutely right. And Whiskey Games is saying, I have an Ardnamurchan tasting tomorrow night, so hoping to try these there too. Hopefully, Matthew, that they'll have brought that along with you. Andy remembers that we might have had a wee advance taste on the experimental products that might have gone into making putting this product together. Yeah, I'm getting a bit of like a coconut ice, a clean coconut ice. Bags of vanilla icing, a crispness to this. There's a very kind of Ardnamurchan thing where you've got this kind of outdoor sense, crisp, clean, almost like an outdoor linen type thing, and it's easy to find. Outdoor, seaside, coastal, breezy elements to it. A little bit spirity, a little bit, so it's easy to fall into talking about the malt, the grain. If you've ever taken a handful of malt and just kind of chewed on it and just, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. For those of you that haven't, maybe you've had a malty drink, like a hot malted drink. But it's a wee bit like that. Some green notes here, a wee bit of kind of like a nettle. Maybe a little bit of green tea. And I'm hunting. I expected this to be smoky or peaty. But knowing me and my habits, I'm going to try and do this live. Let's see if this works. Let's scan this wee barcode, use the photo, open it in the browser, see what it comes along with. Bottle number 33. It might just be because the batch that the Bonaccord got, these are very, very low numbers. Not that that means anything. Let's tap on this. Let's save that and open it, and we can see all of these casks from 2018 vintage. So I'm going through the PDF and I can see that almost all of it is 2018 vintage, and it is 100% unpeated. There's no smoke in this whatsoever. Thank goodness it's not just me. So here's the PDF you can get just by clicking on that barcode on the back of an Ardnamurchan. This is every single cask that's used in the makeup, all the details, the vintage, everything that you need to know. It's fantastic. Okay, let's have a wee sip. Cask strength, young whiskey. So there's a lot of spice and a lot of heat and a lot of spirit up front. Really a lot. But the reason I reacted as I was sipping it there is the first thing that greets you, you know you're going to get a nice oiliness from it. And that's everything to do with the way the Ardnamurchan make their whiskey, of course, but it's got so much to do surely with that Golden Promise grain. We love that sense of kind of almost like a gloopiness, that character, that oiliness, that weight, the body that barley can bring. Almost brings a light honey into things. Super pure, super clean, super spirit forward. I suspect as I'm sipping this, I think these are first fill barrels as well. It's going to be easy to check, isn't it? All bourbon, all ASBs. If they were second fill, they wouldn't say bourbon, they would say refill. So these are all a lot of casks have gone into this makeup. By the way, this is a decent sized outturn. This is a fantastic scale for a limited edition. You should be able to get your hands on this bottle. I hope you can. This is going to be one of these whiskies that you're going to get to know, have a discussion with, understand, and it's going to get better and better and better. Some nice fruit there as well. Some sweet pear, some sweet crisp green apple. And as time goes on, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to hope that I've got my water dropper. I usually have it on hand. My Isle of Rassy water dropper. And put a wee scoosh into this and see how it works with a wee bit of water. They've put this out at 58.2% ABV, actively teasing you, actively encouraging you to give it a try with a wee bit of water in it. Orchard, salty, that mineralic, coastal, so outdoors. The water has certainly changed the flavour, made things a wee bit more accessible. Sitting down and spending a bit of time with this is going to be great fun, but it has hardly impacted that oiliness whatsoever. It's the body, the robustness, the thickness of the spirit is absolutely still intact. It's almost like it's somehow exaggerated it. And I know that can actually make sense. There's a reason for that. And sometimes by adding a wee bit of water to something, it doesn't always dilute and make things thinner. It can actually exaggerate some things. And I think that that's exactly what's happened there. What a fantastic product. So we're in a situation now that we can taste unpeated. It's fantastic. I'm so relieved that it's, I'm so happy that it's unpeated. Raw, clean, Ardnamurchan spirit that has been made with Golden Promise barley, and they haven't been attempted to add anything. Nothing whatsoever. They've kept it completely pure and unadulterated. This is a product for enthusiasts. It's a product for whiskey lovers generally. But to be able to get your geek on and taste first fill Ardnamurchan that's just Golden Promise, and then any other Ardnamurchan that you want to pick and try it alongside, it can be great fun. I think if you picked up the standard AD, obviously there's going to be a wee bit of peat and things in there. But for those of you who don't enjoy peat or smoke, there's an Ardnamurchan with your name on it now. Completely unpeated, all about the barley. I jotted down a mild fresh cigarette packet on nosing this at Denise's and Peter's tasting. I get that completely, absolutely nailed it. Andy, Arnie, sorry, you're very, very good at this. But it's been a hell of a long time since I've cracked open a fresh cigarette packet. But there was a time in the long distant past. And absolutely, Andy Hills is saying, waiting to open the Glasgow until a certain Jerry Miller when he arrives at our house on Tuesday. So making do with an Aqvavitae Daffmill. Oh, you're having to slum it for a little while, are you, Andy? Fantastic, buddy. Unfortunately, I have to go tonight, says Bruno. Bruno in Portugal, wonderful to have had you in, buddy. I'll catch up tomorrow to see what I missed. Cheers, Barflies, and cheers, Roy. Bruno, now that it's tomorrow and you're back again, you didn't miss much, I don't think. But enjoy the rest of the session. Cheers. Thanks, Bruno. Wow, and it's gone. Pretty Moorish. Pretty Moorish. Time to get some peat on. I can't picture you with a cigarette Aqvavitae. Neither can I, Jimmy. It was a bizarre thing. I was never a smoker, but you know, I would occasionally be a social smoker. My brother and I always enjoyed a cigar in the past, but I can't even be bothered with cigars now. I just find tobacco, I don't know, it just kind of gets in the way. So I've never, yeah. But once upon a time, yes, I did. We all have our things, don't we? I missed this. Brian M has bought me a dram. Sorry, I don't know when that came in, Brian. Sorry, I've been banging my gums and not paying attention here. But Brian's bought me a dram to say the Aqvavitae Glasgow arrived today. Unfortunately, it's at my mum's place in New Jersey because it's illegal to ship alcohol to Michigan. Good for you that you're using the meal network and the meal is your mum. Fantastic, Brian. He's saying, so I have to wait until I visit her on Christmas to try it. That's not too far away. I hope it's worth the wait when you eventually get hold of it. And my pal James, a Greta Malt, celebrating being a member of Barflies for 67 months. Evening from Inverness. Good whiskey, folks. Showing off that he's already over in Scotland. Brilliant stuff, James. It's wonderful to have you in tonight. Brian M as well. Thank you for your dram. I'm going to be careful here because I'm going to be moving into slightly more peaty things. So let's have a wee sip of my Glasgow to go back before I go into this one. Well, the Ardnamurchan disappeared quickly, didn't it? I've got in this turntable glass, I've got a wee bit of my Glasgow. Let's put a wee bit more in. The reason I'm comparing these is not to decide which one is better or which one is lesser, because you know what whiskey's like. If I put those two drams up into a room of 100 people, 50 people are going to prefer, 50 people are going to prefer the other, or any mix of the two. It's just the way it is. The reason I'm doing it is just out of pure curiosity. What we've got is 8-year-old first fill bourbon in both of these whiskey releases. Oh. And the only difference is that one's peated. One's a wee bit paler. I don't know if you're going to be able to see in the glass. But I'm going to be trying to see and look at this peated expression and see if I get that same fruit character that I get. Because there's a good chance that that's coming from the Glasgow Spirit, right? Let's see if you can see a difference in colour there. This one is just a touch paler. No, it doesn't really show. There's really not much in it. Okay, so I suffer from peat blight from time to time. Sometimes I'll nose a whiskey and I'll give you 20 different notes from it, and peat or smoke won't be one of them. Peaty, damp smoke, mulchy smoke, earthy smoke, coal smoke, cigarette smoke, all of these things can just pass me by. It has to be something that I'm looking for, and it has to be something that it's kind of strange how it works sometimes. My brain has become very, very good at dialing it out. That is not the case this evening. The first thing I get is a cool, cold cigarette smoke. We're on a cigarette theme, aren't we? There's fruit here. So when I nose my whiskey, the fruit it always reminds me of the Fox's Glacier Mints, the wine gums, and specifically the blackcurrant ones, the bit of lime in there as well. The fruit is just very, very obvious. The peat in here is bringing the fruit along like it's apples and charred citrus. It's orchard and orange skins. If anyone's ever been to Italy and tried, and I don't think it's an Italian thing necessarily, but a candied orange peel, orange rind. Imagine that with a smoky element to it. There's a wee bit of kind of burnt candle wax too, like not candle wax, like you've just extinguished a candle. Almost like a wee touch of I don't know. This is perfect winter sipping. So when we talk about the changing of the seasons and things, this isn't sherry cask. This isn't some exotic big cask. This is bourbon. But it's a perfect winter whiskey. Okay, let's have a wee sip. It's there. The smoke's hiding it on the nose, but on the palate, the smoke's definitely here. Lots of smoke. Fantastic. Wow. Wow. This is the same reaction I had with mine. This is 8-year-old whiskey. This is just so exciting for anybody that's into whiskey. In 2025, we live in the golden age. The whiskey market might be a bit suppressed, but if you're a whiskey lover, an enthusiast, a whiskey geek, we're spoiled. We really are. The prices are coming down. The whiskey's more varied than it's ever been. The geekiness is off the charts, and the quality and the flavour of these whiskies, especially these new wave distilleries at a young age, is just so exciting. I'm going to have a wee sip of mine. It's almost like they help each other. It's almost like they exaggerate each other. Let's go back to the smoky one. This is very peaty. The Glasgow 8-year-old, their official core range, is much peatier than I expected it to be. And I mean that in a very, very good way, a very positive way. That was just like a wow moment there. That was just so much flavour, so much savoury character, so much kind of salt and maybe even a salt and vinegar savoury element coming into things. So you've got all that fruit, and you've got this big wash, this big peat tsunami. And it's the peat is hanging around. It's hanging around on the palate for a long time. Let's go back to my quieter, fruitier. It almost exaggerates things. These are the exact same spirits, made at the exact same time. One's peated, the other one is unpeated. Maybe when they run the peated campaigns and things, maybe they change the cut points a little bit. Maybe there is a difference to the spirit there. Just fantastic whiskies. And the reason that I think this is exciting, the reason that I'm going to get excited in front of you right now is because this is Glasgow at 8 years old. This is just 8 years old. They've only been producing, when this was made, they've only been producing their whiskey in earnest for 1 or 2 years, a couple of years, 3 years at the most. It can only have been 2 years because they're 10 years old this year. And the future that we've got from all of these new distilleries is just so exciting. Please take yourselves along to Glasgow Whisky Festival. Go and visit the people at Glasgow and say, let me try your new 8-year-old bourbon. Have you any of the Aqvavitae bourbon as well? I'd like to do a wee side-by-side. Is that possible? You might have to be carrying 2 glasses. I don't know how that's going to work because the Whisky Festival, you only have 1 glass. So they'll probably pour you a wee bit of one and then a wee bit of another. It's a good way to do it. I hope that we can pull that off. That would be a fantastic thing. I would like you to experience what I've just experienced there, just for the pure geekiness of it. There are 2 more whiskies to share tonight. And I've got a Glasgow distillery glass that I didn't use for the Glasgow one, but that's okay. Oh, but here's a spoiler, and that's pure coincidence. I've got an Ardnahoe glass for the last one. Can you guess what's going to go in that? I'd like to talk about one final thing when we talk about bourbon casks, and there's a wee bit of anxiety laced through it. Probably because of all the smoking, Aqvavitae. That's Jimmy probably suggesting, and being quite judgmental with it, Jimmy. That maybe the reason I'm peat blight and smoke blind. I suffer from peat blight and I'm smoke blind is that maybe once upon a time I was smoking too much. And he's saying, if you're lighting orange peels, you've had too much whiskey. No, there's a thing you can do. And there was back when we were in Spain years and years and years ago, and it's blurry memories, but stick with me, okay? They cut an orange in half and they took the flesh out. We ate the flesh, but they took it out in such a way that the base of the orange stood up. The pith that went through the center stood up like a wick, and the bottom of the orange was like a cup. And they poured, I think it was olive oil. Maybe they didn't. I don't know. I don't even remember now. And they lit the pith of the orange and used it almost like a little table light, like a tea light or something. I don't want people going out and lighting olive oil and things like that. I can't remember what they did, but there was a very specific smell. And it certainly, when it got to the bottom of it, what you were getting was this kind of orange pith, this candle flame, the char, the smell was a very distinctive smell. So if anyone knows what I'm talking about, please chime in the comments, because it might be one of those kind of Mandela effect moments where I completely made it up or it happened in an alternative reality. But I remember in Spain in the evening sitting outside, it got dark. And that's what they were doing. Our neighbours that we were with, they were making these kind of makeshift candles out of these orange peels. And that's what it reminded me of. I wasn't lighting them, but I remember what it was like, Jimmy. Whiskey with Molly saying, I'm glad you like young whiskies, blind drams. Oh, that's the blind tasting consortium that's coming up on the horizon, Ben. I'm looking forward to it, buddy. And it's nice to have you in tonight. Jimmy's bought me a dram. I have to say, anyone who loves whiskey and isn't part of the Aqvavitae world is really missing out. This is really fun. Buddy, if you think this is fun, I'm going to say thank you for indulging me, and thank you for being so polite about it as well. And also for buying me a dram to market. You're a superstar, Jimmy Legg. I miss you, fella. Whiskey with Molly, Ben is in celebrating being a member of the Barflies for 49 months. Can't wait to see you at Glasgow Whisky Festival. Please say hi. Ben? We're going to be hanging out together the entire weekend, buddy. What are you talking about? Such a pleasure to hear you taste this, Roy. It's a pleasure to have you in from all the way from Paris, Greg. Justin Wan is saying, had this in the background tonight while I'm working away, finally back home, and the vPub is my full attention. Hopefully I can make it to the quiz. I hope you can too, buddy, but if you can't, don't worry about it. You need sleep, Justin. You need to stay powerful. You need to stay ready to address all the whiskey demands that you have, buddy. But it's nice. It's always a pleasure to have you here. A big dram in from Ben. What a community. No one knows what goes on in our lives personally, but we always have this to settle ourselves. Looking forward to seeing many of you next week. It's such a centralizing thing, this community, and I appreciate it. Ben, I don't think anyone has got any idea how much I've come to rely on it throughout my entire adult parenting life. And it is, your words strike a chord, big guy. I hope you're well. Celebrating hitting the big 50 with a 28-year-old Ben Nevis from a refill hogshead, tropical weighty fruit bomb wouldn't have happened without this community. Slant you all. Fantastic celebrations happening right now. I'll raise a wee glass for my pal Ben, Whiskey with Molly. But we have to pause for a second for our pal down in New Zealand, for Dave Swift, and say, hitting the big 50 is not a small thing. It's a big deal. The years post 50 feel like months, is the bad news. The good news is that we get to enjoy it together. Dave, many happy returns, big guy. Cheers to you. Nice to have you in. Thank you for the dram. Thank you, Ben. Happy birthday, Dave Swift. That's a good peaty whiskey. That is a good peaty whiskey. What am I missing? Lots and lots and lots of things. Lots of people congratulating Dave. Fantastic. Andy is saying, enjoying a rather fine Madeira Cask Andalusia whiskey co-striker, courtesy of Tom, Whiskey and Wine Trails. He's a superstar, Tom, and he's already here in Glasgow, soaking up the atmosphere. I can't wait to give the big guy a hug when I see him in Glasgow. Whiskey-loving pianist is in. Good to see you, buddy. Life begins at 50. Here's to that. Well, here's to that. That's a wonderful sentiment, and one that I need to believe in and hang on to. Okay, we've done the Glasgow. Peated, we've done the comparison. There's a wee bottle here that you're going to be interested in. But I know that you're obviously going to be keen. See, we didn't even have time for the Arran tonight. I've still got 2 bottles to uncork with you, and I'm what? 1:45. It's going to be a longer vPub tonight. I hope that's okay. Once in a blue moon. And you know, you were starved last week. I went and left you. So let's make up for it tonight with this benchmark whiskey. Now, we had a limited edition 10-year-old from Ardnamurchan released last year. And it disappeared. It was pretty tough to get a hold of. This is a much larger outturn. This is going to be international export as well. This bottle should have a good chance of making it to wherever you're able to buy Ardnamurchan today. I hope that that's the case. Now, you're going to step in and say, Roy, hold your horses a wee minute. That Ardnamurchan is not exclusively ex-bourbon. This was going to be my example of what is the industry is very, very tempted to do for very understandable reasons. You can see that this is not dark whiskey. You can see that they've not relied on sherry to make a dark whiskey or anything here. What they're simply doing here, this is to all intents and purposes a bourbon matured whiskey. You know, I think it's 90-something% ex-bourbon matured, but there are a couple of sherry barrels or sherry casks or sherry butts in the mix. In fact, I'm going to tell you, because I did scan this code earlier, so I should tell you exactly what it is rather than just stabbing at guessing. So unpeated, 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 peated, peated, peated. So lots and lots of peated. Lots and lots of unpeated. So we've got one unpeated Spanish Oloroso hogshead, and at the other end of the scale, we've got one peated Spanish Oloroso hogshead. And that's up against maybe, it looks to be close to 50-50. Maybe there's a wee bit more unpeated in the mix than peated. But we're speaking about, I mean, I could count this, but it would be clumsy. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. You know. So it's looking about something in the order of about 20 casks peated and about the same, maybe a couple more unpeated. But they've added one cask unpeated, one cask peated, hogshead of a Oloroso hoggy. Why have they done that? Why is it that most of the core range whiskies that we have, the flagship, the entry level, why is it like this? Why is it ex-bourbon is the backbone and then seasoned, darkened, fortified, enriched, otherwise to some people enhanced with sherry casks? If I'm sitting here raving about how amazing bourbon casks are, why isn't everyone just releasing lots and lots of bourbon cask releases? And it's because of flavor and dimension and depth and variety and engagement and everything. They have discovered, and I've not even tasted this yet, they've deliberately put in sherry, even a tiny amount of unpeated and peated into this mix to add a wee bit of dimension. I love bourbon cask whiskey. I love first fill. I love refill. I love refill when it's got a bit of maturity on it. I love it when it's been left a hell alone. It's not been footered with. I love the purity. I love the access to flavour. I love everything. I love the fact that it doesn't obscure. Add a bit of peat in there, things become a bit muddier. Add a lot of active casks, add a lot of sherry in there. It becomes a bit more opaque, but it's still delicious. The reason I love bourbon is, and it's my preferred thing, is not because of that kind of purity or transparency or access. It has become my preferred flavour. But we also need to understand that there's a practical function as well. A practical function that you can access things easier through bourbon. I think it's true to say that. And also with it, when it comes to seasoning and adding dimensions, whether it's depth or width, to the whiskey, the other casks, specifically sherry, can do huge things. This noses like an absolute dream. There is smoke here. The smoke is much more subdued than the Glasgow I've just shared. That makes sense. It's 50-50 in this. I cannot detect any sherry, if I'm honest. Nothing. There's nothing that I could come away with saying, I think there's a wee bit of sherry in the mix here. The team have obviously worked out that just a wee drop of sherry is adding something. A bit of seasoning. A layer. This noses, and it's an obvious thing to say. I know you're going to say, oh, Roy, this nose is like mature spirit. Why am I saying this? We've become accustomed to new independent distilleries, newer distilleries coming along sharing 3, 5, 7-year-old whiskies, 8-year-old whiskies. These distilleries now are getting to critical age points. And this is nosing. I have to have a sip. A lot of you are coming to Glasgow, and listen, if there's a lot of people that's watching tonight and they're not going to be coming to the Glasgow celebrations and things, and I'm sorry, and if I apologise in advance if I talk too much, especially next week's vPub where it's going to be right on the eve of the Glasgow celebrations. But I hope that one year or sometime you're going to be able to make it. When you make it to Glasgow, you need to make a beeline for the Ardnamurchan stand and see what they've got, but I suspect that they'll be sharing this with you. So where I'm nosing previous to this, including that Golden Promise Ardnamurchan, these cold, cool outdoor things, there's a warmth to this. And I suspect that warmth is not about those sherry casks. I think it's to do with the maturity. And I think it's got something to do with the extra time that the bourbon casks have had on this spirit. But there's a warmth, fireside thing. There is a depth to this. Okay, let's go. Let's do the best I can at this point in the evening. Salt and pepper. Lots of orchard, specifically apples, crunchy apple flesh, and a spiced, creamy, let's imagine like a creme brulee crust, or so I'm getting kind of a vanilla custard. I'm getting a kind of spiced sweetness. It's warmth. And I don't know, some people smell and taste color, something. Temperature, I smell cool whiskies, I smell warm whiskies. It's just doesn't make sense, but it does to me. I'm going to have another wee sip. I'm going to use a word I've never used to describe an Ardnamurchan before, but it makes sense. There's poise here, there's balance, and there's elegance to this. I've never used elegant to describe an Ardnamurchan in my life. It's not an elegant whiskey. It's an outdoors whiskey, but there's elegance to this. You could argue it's based on the whiskies that I've been sipping and sharing with you before I've got to this glass tonight. Absolutely. But that's what's happening. I spend a lot of time on the vPub talking about how age isn't the be-all and end-all. The older it gets doesn't mean that it's going to get better, and that's absolutely true. However, I have yet to find potent, strong, powerful examples of how you can substitute age. It has an impact. Time, care. I hesitate to say it, but I want to say it in very small letters, and I want to almost whisper it. That's maybe the best core Ardnamurchan that I've ever tasted. And I have very fond memories of my first exposure to Ardnamurchan way back in those days when I first tasted that minerality, that wonderful, exciting prospect of the future that Ardnamurchan gave me when I first tasted it back in 2020, I think. I think that's the best. I feel like I'm going to explore this and uncover more and more and more inside this whiskey. Tinned mandarins now. So it's kind of gone suddenly sweet as I just kind of stopped for a second. Maybe even a wee bit of tinned peaches now we're on that theme. Wee bit of tropicality coming in. That's wonderful. It's just a neck pour. It's just the bottle's just been opened. God, love whiskey. Love it, love it, love it. Better than 417 Aqvavitae? Okay, now you're asking. No, I did specifically say, and 417, I think mine were 411 and 413 from memory. That this is core range. Core range. I was specific. There's been some absolute blockbuster single cask Ardnamurchans. Listen, I've got one more before we get into the quiz tonight, and it's a wee bit of a bonus, a wee bit of a surprise. But as part of the Friday tasting, the under table tasting, Ardnahoe is bringing something very, very special for us. Something that's not going to be easy to taste anywhere else. Part of the point of the under the table tasting, right? Give me a second. The whiskey that they're going to be pouring for us was delivered to me today. So Paul, the guy from Ardnahoe, I'm on to Ardnahoe now, apologies, turned up. He said, here's the whiskies for the tasting. The reason he's bringing them to me in advance is because we need to pour them in advance. There's 100 people going to be in that room, 100 people at a tasting, okay? So you can imagine if 100 people are having 7 grams each, that's 700 glasses of whiskey to be poured. So the logistics of it is huge. So we need the whiskey in advance. In order to do that, he turned up today. As part of turning up today, he knew I was trying to find a bottle of this whiskey I'm going to share with you now, and he brought it along. He's sending me an invoice so that I can pay for this. I didn't treat this as a gift. It's kind of awkward and horrible of me. I wanted to go out and buy this as soon as I saw that it was announced. I couldn't wait to get my hands on it. But you know that I've already released an ex-bourbon Ardnahoe, and it was the first time that an ex-bourbon Ardnahoe was available at any scale to anyone. But now we have an official core release. This is exactly the same as the story of Glasgow here. We have a 5-year-old cask strength, all ex-bourbon matured Ardnahoe core range release. It's just fantastic. What a time we're living in. It's almost like we're at the point in time where the stuff that we're asking for as geeks is suddenly starting to appear. Transparency, you got it. Fair pricing, you got it. Wider, more markets, accessibility, you've got it. For the people who care, for the ones that care, they are listening and they're doing the things that we are asking, the things that you demand through the Online Scotch Whisky Awards. Let's get it in the glass as we think about the last issue with Bourbon Casks. Five years old, 60.9% ABV, cask strength, composed exclusively of spirit matured in first fill ex-bourbon barrels, hand-selected for their fullness of character. This whisky has then been bottled at natural cask strength. Hallelujah. Okay, so there's going to be people that are quite familiar with my Ardnahoe. There's very, when I say my Ardnahoe, the Ardnahoe that we were able to release together. Sorry for saying my Ardnahoe. And there's clear. So the people that are coming back to me now and saying, Roy, can I buy more of the Ardnahoe? Is it not sold out? It's gone. It's one of these things. It's there and it's gone, and it's just going to be something that we enjoy remembering in the future, right? And a transient experience. Now they've brought along a core range version of that. So this is as close as you can get to that. This is super peaty. This is potent Islay peat. Ardnahoe are in the northeast of Islay, but this noses like the biggest bruisers of the Kildalton distilleries. And at 5 years old, from bourbon barrels, everything is on display here. There is a bit of spirit on the nose, but that pineapple character, that tropicality that exists in Ardnahoe is here. The peat is somewhere in between the cool end of things and the warm end of things. It's somewhere in the middle. It's a little bit like almost a chimney smoke peat is the best thing. A hearth, coal fire hearth, that type of thing. It's slightly sooty. Slightly warm. Pineapple. Sweet apple. 60.9, and I'm sticking my nose straight in the glass. You know what's going to happen there. It's going to get anaesthetized a little bit, but it's great fun. Cheers, everyone. Ha. You're just lucky buggers. This is coming to everyone. This is nonsense that this can be 5 years old. Nonsense. Soft, big, round, robust, but not all up in your face, not all high ABV, not all everything. This is remarkably restrained for its age and for its potent strength. PT whiskey from the same casks, more or less, as the Ardnamurchan have opened tonight. From the same casks, more or less, as the Glasgow 8-year-old that I've opened tonight, and yet completely different. None of these whiskies, they're the same in profile. You could vaguely put them in the same descriptive bucket But if you were to sip them next to each other and then have somebody mix them up blind and give them back to you, you'd pick them all out instantly and easily because they're just different creatures. When we talk about, terroir, and we talk about regionality, and we talk about all these controversial things in whiskey, it doesn't matter how we describe it. We need a way to talk about the fact that somehow that very, very tightly defined thing that is Scotch whisky is able to be so completely different, despite the descriptors, and on paper the thing should taste the same, and it does not. It refuses to comply, and it's fabulous. The problem we have is that there's too much good whiskey, and that's a nice segue to go into the last topic tonight. Anthony Lambert, I once again won't make Glasgow this year. I'll be in Glasgow next year sometime in October, just not sure exactly what date. Try and make it November. I'll make Limburg in 2026 though for the first time. We've mentioned Anthony. Maybe if you have to remind me to bring that Glasgow. Mike Molasses is saying the Aqvavitae influence is being felt around the industry. I doubt that. The Aqvavitae influence, I mean, it is a community of people. We are knowledgeable, we are engaged, we are experienced, but we're still fairly small. I think there's more impact when things become tighter and business becomes more challenging. I think they're looking for creativity and ideas and stuff like that. But I'm always very, very careful to consider how much we're actually leading anything where a lot of people don't even know who we are or who I am. Jimmy Legg is saying, Aqvavitae, do you think you? I don't know what that means, Jimmy. George P is saying it'll be awkward if you hate it. I feel very confident about drinking many, many brands of whiskey these days, to the point that the chances of me hating it is very, very rare. There have been things that I've opened on the vPub that's been difficult to put any positive spin on at all, and I've just had to be honest with you and say, I'm not getting this, I'm not getting on with it, and it is a wee bit awkward because I like to be positive, I like the content to be positive, but when there's things like this being served up, it's just a delight, it's a dream, because it's fabulous stuff. Jimmy Legacy, do you think that we are having an actual effect? Yeah, but I think that we are also saying the same things as the majority of. Let's imagine we go to a German-speaking whiskey forum over there in Germany, where all the Germans are sitting there enjoying their whiskies and talking about it. They're going to arrive at similar conclusions to us. Asia, it doesn't matter where you go. The whiskey geeks are gathering, and they're coming up with very, very similar I think, appraisals of what is objectively good whiskey in positive directions. There are lots and lots of metrics out there. There are lots of places that the whiskey industry can go to get feedback. Unfortunately, there's far too many that are potentially paying for consultation and agency and market research and all of this nonsense and things. And I don't know. All they have to do is employ a few savvy whiskey canny people, and they would have access to that, I think, if they wanted to. But I don't know how much our desires are actually effective in business, if I'm honest. Andy is saying, so many bottles I'd like to buy at the moment. Have asked Hells to hide my cards. I know that's the problem, Andy. That's why festivals like Glasgow are so fabulous, or wherever you are, wherever you can access, however you can get together. As soon as two people get together, the tasting potential is doubled, right? So imagine a group of half a dozen people, a whiskey club beyond that, then an event, then a tour, then a whiskey festival. You know, it makes the sharing much easier, and we don't need to always have the bottles all of the time. Talk to me about the peat Aqvavitae. The peat in the Ardnahoe there's plentiful, Ben, and it jumped a huge way down now. I need to catch that. Peter Lee's in and he's bought me a dram. He's saying, can you wish our eldest son, Lawrence, a happy 20th? How can Lawrence be 26? 26th birthday, same day as David Swift. Looking forward to meeting everyone at Glasgow Whisky Festival. I met Tom and Rick already. So it's Tom O and Rick Johnson. They're already in town. They're already doing their thing. I'm going to raise this wee Ardnahoe and I'm going to wish Lawrence a very happy 26th birthday. Cheers, big guy. Peter and Denise, you've done a good job. I'm big fans of all your children. Jimmy's saying smoky grilled pineapple and a cheeseburger is one of life's truly great things. Oh, wow. I've never tried such a thing, Jimmy. You're making me hungry. Graham Fraser is here. Good to see you, Graham. He's saying, evening, Roy Aqvavitae and Barflies. Just home from Campbelltown. Awful weather today. Did you take the bus back up the road as well? My goodness, Graham, you're such a journeyman, right? Jean Kelly is saying, is there a distillery that is so consistently punches above its weight as Ardnamurchan? I think I take your point, and I think it's absolutely true, and we've been saying it for a while, hence their amazing success in things like the Oswas, the Dramface Top 40, things like that. It's amazing to see. But the truth is that they are doing things earnestly. And there's a lot of other distilleries out there, specifically independently owned, specifically new wave distilleries, not exclusive to, but they're all doing things better. So I think that Ardnamurchan are doing something fabulous. They're a torchbearer, they're a guiding light, they're wonderful. And I also think that we're spoiled for choice for other distilleries, other brands doing very, very similar things. It's just a wonderful time to be enjoying whiskey. That's very wise, worldly thinking, Aqvavitae. That was difficult to type, says Jimmy Legg. I'm not sure what was wise and worldly thinking, buddy, but I'll take you for it. Sachin Kent is saying, every time I see a medical professional, they keep telling me not to drink. Can't help myself, though. Well, I think there is a difference between, and we have to be careful because we can't write it off so dismissively, right? Tasting and enjoying whiskey like we do, being very deliberate over every single sip, and drinking. They are different things. And everyone's chemistry and biome and attitude and the way they're set up, the way they react, it's going to be different for everyone. It's never one size fits all. I'm always very mindful. Ethanol is poison. It is literally poison. And, you know, we take this poison in such little quantities that it's hopefully almost a little poison to cure a greater ill type philosophy. I don't know. But it's part of what it is to be alive, to experience these amazing flavors, amazing things. But it's dangerous. It's dangerous. Please always be mindful. Please be aware. Please think about what you pour and what you enjoy. That's all. And if you're doing that, if you're being mindful, then you can enjoy. Sachin, it's nice to have you. Tim Dorpass Whiskey is saying K&L Wine in California is now doing auctions. So lots of whiskey from 10 to 20 years ago available. It's hard to resist. Times are tough for the industry, Tim, but for us as whiskey drinkers, as whiskey enjoyers, whiskey appreciators, the geeks, the enthusiasts, the onlookers, it's better times. I am literally poison, says Jimmy Legg, but if you get a little on Thursdays, but if you only get a little on Thursdays, you'll be fine. So Jimmy Legg's a little bit of a, I enjoy it. I can't. Every time I read your comments, buddy, you have me giggling. It's just the way of it. Whiskey with Molly is saying, drinking alcohol is dangerous. Drink responsibly. And he's also saying, well said, Aqvavitae. Thank you very much, Ben. I mean, it's just obvious. I think that most of the people here are here for a long, long time. Some of them. I mean, we've been running for almost 8 years. They've worked this out. Next year, November, it'll be 8 years, exactly why we bottled this, 8 years. I would like to try and break a world record for everybody sipping the exact same whiskey at the exact same time. And then the 8th year anniversary, this is the bottle I'm going to be reaching for. We can all do a tasting together. I don't know if there's a record that exists for all drinking the same whiskey at the same time all over the world. Probably it's already been done and there's no way that I could ever get close to or break it, but it doesn't matter for our wee community. I would love us all to be able to sip this together. And the closest to, I think it was the 23rd of November from memory, I think Jimmy Legg will probably know, when the first vPub ever went out 8 years ago. That's why that was bottled, that Glasgow 8-year-old. By the way, it's still available. I'm not trying to push or be it'll sell out. It will, like every other Aqvavitae release, it will sell out. I would like us all one day in the near future to be able to sip the same whiskey together. That would be fun. And if there was a way to measure, or for us all to kind of put our tasting notes in at the same time, I don't know, I need more time to think. But that would be fun. Ben is saying, I love that. World record for everyone drinking the same dram. Black Fen is saying, I've been microdosing Jimmy Legg for several years now, and it hasn't done me any harm. Twitch, wink. Nice to have you in, Conrad. Nice to have you sipping along. Before we go into the quiz at the end, I'm going to mention one more thing, and I don't want it to be negative, and I don't want it to bring things down a wee bit, but we have to talk about the future of the bourbon cask because it's precarious. And for years, I've been reading stories about how the bourbon industry was going to switch for sustainability reasons and environmental reasons, and they were going to start to reuse barrels, and that would trash Scotch whiskey and everything else that hinged on the back of ex-bourbon casks. It's nonsense when you think about it. I started off with this rare breed tonight. Do you think that an entire category of whiskey that's been built up now for 1938, it was mentioned pre-war, is suddenly going to be redefined by some legislation? We talk about serendipity and how over the years, that serendipity and those dynamics and those politics and those decisions and changes has shaped what we have today. But the scale that we have today, it's now in firmament, it's permanent, that is defined. Any changes that happen today to change from using one-use only casks in bourbon is going to fundamentally change the value prospect, the offer, the definition, everything that bourbon is. I just don't see that happening. It's far more likely that bourbon will become more scarce potentially, but it'll stay defined. The other risk I don't think that that's a risk. I think that there's always going to be a scenario. It's not just about unions anymore. It's not just about preservation of trades or whatever. It is about preserving a character of a very, very specific product. You can't suddenly just change how that product is made and still call it the same thing. That's defined from here on in. That's not going to be a thing. However, what will be a thing, we've enjoyed this popularity of bourbon growing and the popularity of other whiskey characters, very specifically Scotch, yes, Irish and everything too, all of them enjoying a popularity increase at the same time. If that doesn't synchronize in the future, we could have issues. If the demand from Scotch and Irish and Japanese and everything outstrips the bourbon supply, it's a real problem. Let's not stop there. Let's talk about the fact that it's not just Scotland and Ireland and Japan that's making whiskey anymore. Every country that's got a decent sized population in it, with access to the natural resource that it takes to make whiskey, they are making whiskey today. There are exceptions in the Southern Hemisphere and Australia and places like that. They're leaning heavily on the wine casks that they have close to them. That's just about the logistics and what's available. It's the provenance, let's say, of where they are. But generally speaking, anywhere else, any other country in the world that's making whiskey today is relying heavily on those precious, precious American standard barrels. Let's not stop there. If you're making anything else that is cask aged, other spirits, cask aged gins and vodkas, and certainly rums, countless other booze, you're relying heavily on those ASBs still. the future is not guaranteed. We have to find ways of rejuvenating casks, keeping the integrity, keeping the character, keeping the quality, all of these things. But dechar, rechar, and rejuvenated American bourbon casks, STR even, all of these things that's available to us need to be employed in the future to make us everything as sustainable as possible, and somehow keep access to the wonderful serendipity that has been afforded to us by the amazing, humble bourbon cask. American white oak, Quercus alba. It is fabulous. It's ridiculous that we've arrived at such a place that it's so delicious, but it is, and it is ever so slightly precarious. That said, right now in Scotland, there are more bourbon casks maturing our spirit than there has ever been in recorded history. We are completely spoilt for the variety and for the choice, and we are also completely spoilt for the depth of availability of those stocks. We still have a lot of work to do in terms of making that stock more affordable, because the industry got very greedy and very arrogant over recent years. Present company accepted. I don't think it's easy to levy that at the whiskies that I've been sharing with you tonight, but we all know that the industry, in a very general sense, has been a little bit cynical and a little bit greedy, a little bit too cynical and a little bit too greedy. And now they're in a position where they are struggling to change and pivot. They're struggling to catch up again with that. I've just noticed that I've missed a dram from Alan McLaughlin, one of my pals. It's a shame, Alan. I'm sorry I missed that. Just finished work, so catching the end of this will rewatch, as Ex-bourbon is close to my heart. Very few older refill bourbon available at reasonable prices. Hope to find some recommendations here. It's absurd that I should pick that up, and you're speaking about a very similar thing as well. I hate it when I miss comments, and I'm sorry I punctuated my kind of drawn things to an end, but I think you know where I'm going with it. We are here creating experiences every moment with new bottles of whiskey. It's just a fabulous, fabulous thing to be able to do. There are more outlets for us to get information, feedback back to the industry. Tell us a bit more on that label. Tell us about the casks. Consider celebrating the humble bourbon cask a wee bit more. Tell us when you do. And while you're doing it, can you make it a wee bit more affordable? Can you make it a wee bit more accessible? It doesn't need to look like a lab sample. Scotch whisky is not something where you want to hide how it exists. We want to celebrate how it exists. Scotch whisky is a very traditional thing, but it's an international thing, and it relies on an international symbiosis. Those American casks, those Spanish casks, those European casks. Barley is not always Scottish barley. I know that they seek it these days, but the truth is that Scotch whisky is an utterly, utterly, utterly international product. And that's good, because at the end of the day, after it's been produced, after it's mature, after it's been carefully looked after and put together, it's ready to go back out to the rest of the world. It's a perfect collaborative global product. It needs to be priced a wee bit better. And I honestly think that we need to talk a wee bit more earnestly, openly and transparently about it, and find ways of celebrating the product that it is today, celebrating all of that serendipity. Jimmy Legacy, and I wonder, Aqvavitae, is there room for whiskey to get even better? If it can, I'll truly be amazed. Jimmy, I do think about this. I think that if you consider that the baseline, and I know that if Serge was sitting next to me right now, he would say that the baseline of quality has been raised. But what has been lost is that kind of ability to have outlier miraculous, amazing casks. And I know exactly what he's talking about. I understand where the troughs could be deeper, but the peaks could be higher back in the old days. I want to posit this. The baseline has been increased so much that it's agonized over, and flavor and quality and cask management and all of the understanding that we've developed over years and years and years of understanding how to make the best whiskey has all been increased. I think those peaks are still available. What we need is time and access. And that's not been fully exposed to us yet. We need to wait. We need to be a wee bit more patient. But certainly when all these new producers, these new distillers that have come along, and they are earnestly pouring every ounce of energy that they have to make the best raw spirit that they can possibly make, well, a lot of this is going in first fill, but those first fills are getting disgorged and refilled again, so it's going into refill. And a lot of the new make was originally going into refill as well. And if we're patient enough, and if we're afforded the life in order to be able to try all of this stuff in future, I think that these peaks may not only be maintained, but the optimist in me wants to say that maybe they can become a wee bit higher. Interesting that Brown-Forman closed their cooperage some months ago, says Graham Fraser. I didn't hear about that. Which cooperage, where would that be? Dram Mondays is in. Good to see you, Dram Mondays. He's saying here, here. Jimmy Legg is saying Samaroli stuff. How can you afford it, Jimmy? I can count on this hand how many Samaroli whiskies, original Samaroli whiskies, I've tasted in my life. Anthony Lambert is saying, so ladies and gents, with the clock creeping past 1 and here in Germany, I'm off to the Wooden Hill, off to Bedfordshire, looking forward to the Oswald tomorrow. Tomorrow, it is tomorrow now, because you're on Friday. See you all then. Thank you very much, Anthony. It's wonderful to have you, and I see that Daisy is in here as well. Fantastic to see you, Daisy. How are you keeping? You're coming to Glasgow, right? So here, I'll share that poll with you that I promised absolutely moons ago. Apologies that it's ridiculous that it's taken me this long, but there's a general consensus that people are into it. People enjoy it. Look, the top two here are 28% say it's their preference, and along with another 66% saying that it's something that they like, despite the fact that they may not insist upon it. I think what's really interesting here is that the people that are saying it's not their preference, it's not to their liking, 0% say it's not to their liking. We're talking about Bourbon Cask. And finally, isn't something that I really think about too much. That's 7%. If you add up those numbers, it adds up to 101%. It's obviously down to rounding. Apologies for that. It's just the way the poll worked. But the question I posed was Bourbon Cask matured Scotch malt whiskey, either first fill or refill, ... is either A, my preference, B, is something I like but I don't insist upon, is not my preference, I prefer something else, D, it's not really to my liking, or E, isn't something I really think about too much. So we can clearly see that the community that I speak to are all over bourbon cask maturation. What's interesting to me is that, as I've shown you everything I've shared with you tonight, despite the fact that the old traditional method of let's take some bourbon, let's some sherry, let's vat it, let's take some ex-bourbon and give it an extra maturation, let's take some bourbon and give it a finish, that's kind of been done to death, to the point that it's becoming a little bit too noisy. What we see in front of us with the whiskies that I've shared with you tonight is that the future focusing on the purity of spirit, that variation, not necessarily purely from cask, but inbuilt, unavoidable, whiskey-decided variation that's coming from the point of manufacture of the spirit. I really do believe that it's a thing that we're going to be able to taste and share going forward. I know that I've talked my ears off you all tonight for 2 hours, 28 minutes before we go into the quiz at the end, but it's because it's a passion of mine. I love whiskey. If I was to be left alone and choose only one whiskey, it probably would be whiskey from an ex-American oak, humble bourbon cask. I think I proved that when I was on holiday last week. Anyway, for those of you that are still here, thank you for your patience. We're going to roll into the quiz at the end. Just a reminder saying I'm going to have to pull a parachute right before the quiz. Body is betraying me. I'll participate in the quiz on replay. Justin, thank you very much for your endurance tonight, buddy. And I'll see you on the replay, fella. Thank you. Okay, everyone, we are going into the quiz at the end. It is that time. I want to thank Jim for his vPub last week during the break once more. The quiz at the end, I found it to be very, very, very tricky, very anxiety-laden, and I realised that that's probably the case for most of the vPub quiz at the end things. And I think I went into tonight's quiz thinking that I would try and make it a bit easier. But I don't know if I achieved that because I think it's too easy to make a difficult quiz, and it's very difficult to make an approachable, accessible quiz that you can still learn something from, that there's still interesting facts and things like that in. But I tried. Rick Johnson is saying, I'm keeping Catherine awake with the vPub, so I think I may have to miss my first quiz in a while. Forgive me. You just need some AirPods, and that should cover you, Rick. But you're in Glasgow. You need to get over the jet lag as well, buddy. Good night to you. Good night to Catherine. Graham Fraser saying, all the bottles I bought in Campbelltown this week, 10 were Bourbon Cask bottlings. Fantastic, Graham. Maybe you're just at that point. Maybe you're at the point of realization. Thanks for everyone that's been staying along for me tonight to participate in the quiz at the end. It's wonderful to have you. If you're slipping off to your beds now because the quiz isn't your thing, it's fantastic. Thank you for being here. But those of you who are up for a wee bit more, a wee ounce of energy more, staying for the quiz at the end, please do so. It's very fun focused, always multiple choice. You don't need to share your score playing against yourselves. Cheers. Let's see how we got along tonight. Question 1. Which of these statements is true about the malt used at Bowmore Distillery? I'm going to give you 3 statements. I want you to identify what's true. A, 25 to 30 ppm phenols content. B, all sourced from Islay. Or C, 25% in-house and 75% purchased. So when I speak about the malt, I'm not speaking about the liquid. I'm speaking about upfront, before the process even starts. I'm talking about the malted barley. What statement is true about the malted barley used at Bowmore? That it's typically 25 to 30 ppm phenols, that it's all sourced on Islay, or that it's 25% in-house and 75% bought in. Now, be careful with these banana skin ones, because sometimes the opener is a freebie for everyone. All the potential answers are correct and nobody goes home with a 0, a donut. But if there's a banana skin there, it could mean that you need to be careful that that's not the case. I want you to look here while you're all answering that question. Let's zoom in on me for this one. This is the Cask 280. This is the remnants that I have of Cask 280, which is the famous cask, the one that went into making the Glasgow bottle. A wee bit thicker, a wee bit more viscous, a wee bit richer, a bit more robust, a bit more body. 280, there was only 50 bulk litres, 34 LPA left in the cask. It was very, very, let's say, leaky. Now that looks like clean whiskey, but can you see the black band at the bottom? That's the sediment. So when I first got this sample, this is the colour of the sample. And this is the reason that it wasn't put in front of me to sample. But this is the cask I asked Seb to go and retrieve. And I just need you to look at that. That's why they didn't want to sample it, because the sample that they'd taken was just all that char at the bottom. Listen, it was filtered. This is the filtered product here. You can see much cleaner, but even then you can still see, even in this little sample, that's supposedly cleaned up. There's a lot of char in there. But listen, by the time it's bottled and things and it goes through the mechanical filters to take all of that out, all the black stuff, all the nasty stuff that made it look like that was removed. And we had this wonderful, thick additive, if you like, this element that just added so much to everything that we added. I wanted you to see that just to share it with you. Anyway, you're all super knowledgeable whiskey folk. That's what I want my whiskey to have, Aqvavitae, says Jimmy Legg. I just noticed that was on the table there, and I thought it'd be a good point to share it with you. Bowmore Distillery's malt is typically 25 to 30 ppm, despite the fact that it's in the bottle, it's probably less than 10. It is 25% in a house and 75% sourced from Simpsons. It is not all sourced from Islay. If you answered A, give yourself a point. B, give yourself a point. If you answered, sorry, C, give yourself a point. If you answered A and C, give yourself a point and kudos. Question 2, the Highland Distillery of Glasgow, now part-time production only, shares its workforce with which other distillery? Glasgow and A, Benriach in Speyside, B, Glendronach in the Highlands, or C, Inchgower in Speyside? Glasgow is now part-time production only. It's partially shuttered. It shares its workforce with either Benriach, Glendronach, or Inchgower. Very, very. Willie Dollier's in. Good to see you, Willie. Kyle Taylor's here. Fantastic, Kyle. Good to see you. Stevie O in at this time of night playing along. Stevie, how are you keeping, fella? Jimmy Jazz is here. Nicholas is here. Wonderful. Peter Box is here. Lachlan Mackenzie, Hoyt, John Tankersley, Graham Fraser. Of course you are, Graham. Good to see you, buddy. Randy Rice is here. Bruce Bernard is here. Dave Swift still playing along at the end. Jimmy Legg is in. He's playing along at the end as well. Malts of Scotland has just dropped in to say hello. Hello, Malts of Scotland. It looks like the first time I've welcomed you. It's nice to have you playing along at the end. And Pete Ed is apologising for the typos. No worries at all, big guy. I can tell you that you're absolutely spot on. Vast majority of you saying A. Obviously, they are now sharing their workload with another Brown-Forman distillery, Benriach. Glendronach is also Brown-Forman, but they're in the Highlands. Inchgower is the Diageo distillery. Question 3. Which other 2 distilleries have also shared workforces to keep production running annually at each site? I'm going to give you pairs of distilleries, and I want you to identify a pair that have been sharing workforces. A, Springbank and Glengyle. B, Lagavulin and Laphroaig. C, Manachmore and Glenlossie. Stevie O is putting the David Stirk emoji in the chat. It's a remnant from, I made that specifically for David's, that must be 2 years ago since David was on, and his emoji still stands. At one point I was playing with the idea of making a different emoji for each guest that came on, but workload, workload. Molasses is saying, I have an idea. Good stuff. The vast majority, Dorpass Whiskey Tim is saying, wow, I actually know these. Answered before you finished the question, said Jimmy Legg. A, but C shares the same manager, says Graham Fraser. And Pierre is saying, at least A. You're very, very clever folk. Lagavulin and Laphroaig, to my knowledge, has never shared a workforce. Certainly not one that's easily documented to my mind. Springbank and Glengyle absolutely do to this day, as do Manachmore and Glenlossie. For years now, Manachmore and Glenlossie have been running at full capacity, but in the past, being neighbours on the same site, Manachmore and Glenlossie also shared the same workforce. So if you answered A or C again on this one, I'm being generous tonight, I hope, give yourself a point. 4, what enthusiast pleasing feature is shared by Dunphail Distillery, Glengarry Distillery, and Springbank Distillery? What feature is shared between all three? A, floor maltings, B, worm tubs, C, direct fired stills. Stevie A is just enjoying the emojis tonight. I think he's pulled out the Oswald ones now. Making the most of his Barfly membership and all the whiskey themed emoji. Good stuff, Stevie. So who's kilting up for Glasgow Whisky Festival? Hey, I will not be in a kilt. If you fancy it, Andy, go right ahead. Springbank has all of those, says Jimmy Legg. Floor maltings, worm tubs, and direct fire stills. Oh, wow. I'm looking for something that Dunphail has, Glengarry has, and Springbank has. I'm suggesting that it's either floor maltings, worm tubs, or direct fired stills. There is some attrition here. There is definitely some attrition tonight on this one. It's pretty sure that you would get past this. Tony Nelson is saying Springbank has no stills at the moment, right, Graham Fraser? Okay. But when they replace their stills, they're not going to change the way they go about their business, Tony, right? Good to see you in, Tony. Graham Fraser is saying A, but I can't remember if Dunphail has direct fired stills. Gordon J is in saying Springbank only have one direct fired still, not stills. Okay. So if each distillery had one direct fired still each, how would I have gone around? I would have still written in direct fired stills. Anyway, I can tell you that Dunphail, Glengarry, and Springbank all have floor maltings, and they all have direct fired stills. Worm tubs, yes. Springbank, as Jimmy Legg has already pointed out, Springbank has worm tubs. Glengarry does not have worm tubs. Dunphail is doing floor malting. They're doing direct fire stills. Glengarry has now put in floor maltings once more again, and the wash still is now direct fired. A bit of a kind of rewind to the past for Glengarry. Picture question at the halfway point. I'm going to show you a distillery scene here, but there's an asshat, so you need to know the answer to two different things to answer this question. Look at that scene for a second, try and work out where we're at. To me, I can't look at that building, but I see a smiley face on it, right? Under that pagoda, it looks like two eyes and a big square mouth. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Three options here. First one. This site is the third largest by capacity, and when I say the third largest by capacity, I'm talking about LPA, litres of pure alcohol per annum, in Scotch malt whisky production. B, it releases a peated cask strength. Or C, it shares the same town as the lost distilleries of Conville Moor and Pittyveich. So only one of those statements is true for the scene that you can see in front of you. Either you're looking at the third biggest by capacity distillery in Scotland, or one that releases a peated cask strength, or one that shares the same town as the lost distilleries of Conville Moor and Pittyveich. This is the halfway point. My Glasgow bourbon cask is shining, I have to say. It's beautifully flavorful and fruity. Everyone seems to be, there's a huge consensus for C here, suggesting that it's to do with the closed distilleries. And Lachlan is admitting, going with the flow for C. Neckpore is in. Good to see you, Neckpore. Okay, I can tell you that, yes, you're absolutely spot on. We're looking at Glenfiddich and Dufton. And Dufton, of course, shares the same location as Convomore and Pittyvake, the lost distilleries. The third largest is likely to be the largest, along with Glenlivet. Sorry, it releases an annual peated cask strength or a peated cask strength. Unfortunately, not. So it was C is what I was looking for. It's going to get tougher now from rolling in to the rest of the quiz. So let's see who's still on a 5 out of 5. Andy Hells, Daisy Vleeland, Graham Fraser, Gene Kelly, Dave Swift. Okay, there's been some attrition. George P. George Petras. 2 George P's in tonight. Good to see George Petras. Good to see George P. Tony Nelson. Lachlan McKenzie. Did I pick you out on a 5 out of 5, Lachlan? Alan is on a 5 out of 5. Lassie or Otsman. Good to see Alan. Good to see you, Lassie. Lassie's on a 4. And a wee banana skin. Graham Young is on a 5 out of 5 with 1 crowdfunding offering. That's the way it should be. Donner Pass Whiskey is on a 5 out of 5 with a pass mark achievement. 5 is the pass mark. Let's go into the tougher questions then. Question 6. Of the current 22 different core expressions of Tomintoul available to purchase on their website, one distillery with 22 core expressions on their website, and that's not exhaustive. How many are sold as ex-bourbon matured? On theme tonight. So we're looking at a single distillery, all their core range expressions available on the website, but what proportion of those 22 is advertised as? Not just we have to do some digging, we have to be in the know. They literally type it on the website or put it on the label of the whiskey that it's bourbon cask. How many? A, just the one. B, 3 or 4. C, 8 or 9. Huge attrition going to come from this on the way. Suddenly realised this might be tougher to get a 10 out of 10 than I originally thought. Graham Fraser saying I may need help with this. Well, I was very surprised. Tomintoul have knocked it out of the park when it comes to transparency and telling us exactly how they go about their business. Tomintoul and Glencadam, their neighbour, are famous for having lots and lots of port and wine and funky and exotic and crazy. But when they do their thing, when they do their purity, they do it very, very, very well. And sometimes in the muddle of the just plethora of perhaps arguably too many releases, we can forget that that's the case. And it's not our fault. It's not our fault. It's the optics and it's the strategy. Peterhead Frank is saying, okay, we're switching to C. Donner Pass Whiskey is saying C. Graham Young is now going C. Could it be the case that a wee humble distillery like Tomintoul actually managed to release 8 or 9 bourbon cask core releases and tell us that it's the case? Peter Box is saying C. Stevie O is saying C. Gene Kelly is saying C. More is better. Keep it coming. Hoyt, C. Andy Hells could be C. Unbelievably. 8 or 9 of the 22 different core range of expressions, despite the fact that we view Tomintoul as being this kind of a crazy, PX and Oloroso and all these wine casks and Amontillado and everything else, 8 or 9 of their core range expressions. Yes, I'm including the 21, the 25 and the 40, but so many, their peated tang, their peated expression, their 14-year-old, so many more. 8 or 9 of the 22, they advertise and celebrate the fact that it's American ex-bourbon casks. Hats off to Tomintoul. I could do with a lot more of their expressions being natural, but that's me being picky. A lot of their smaller limited edition ranges are natural these days. And I think that there's a huge argument that we've forgotten how good a job Tomintoul actually are able to do. Question 7. Of the 7 Royal Warrant Scotch whisky brands, I'll say that again. Of the 7 Royal Warrant Scotch whisky brands, how many are actual distilleries? So there are 7 Scotch whisky brands with Royal Warrants, but how many are distilleries? A, today, none. B, just the one. C, actually, there are 2. Graham Fraser is saying, phew, that was close. 6 out of 6. Lachlan is saying 6 out of 6, 1 assist and 1 switch. Lachlan, I love how honest you try and play it. It's brilliant. Graham Young is saying, whoop, 6 out of 6. Fantastic. Gene Kelly's hanging on his 6 out of 6. George P as well. Superb. Peter Box celebrating his pass mark. Andy Hill's on a 6 out of 6. I feel like this has come up before, says Mike Molasses. C. There will have been various questions around Royal Warrants on the vPub in the past, but I'm actually asking you just how many are actual distilleries. Lassie, Paul Gidley's in. Good to see you, Paul. Lassie, George P, Peter Box, Daisy Vleeland, Lachlan, Hoyt, Dave Swift, George Petras, Stevie O, Dave the Brave, Alan, all saying C. Good to see you, Dave the Brave. Bruce Bernard also saying C. I can tell you that you are all absolutely correct. Out of the 7 Scotch whisky brands, I wrote them down. Matthew Gorgon, Sons, obviously famous grouse, that is. J&B, Berry Brothers, Dewars, Johnny Walker, plus the 2 distilleries of Laphroaig and Royal Loch Nagar. All enjoying a Royal Warrant. The 2 distilleries are obviously Laphroaig and Royal Loch Nagar. Okay, getting tricky now. Question 8. The original 1770 Glasgow distillery was located in the north of the city in Dundashill and was bought by DCL just after it closed. DCL were after stocks, they were after buildings, they were after warehousing space, and they were after the cooperage. But what year did this Dundashill distillery, the original Glasgow distillery, actually close? When did it close? A, 1902, B, 1920, C, 2010. When did Dundashill Distillery close? 7 out of 7 for Lachlan. Superb. Hanging on in there. Has Laphroaig switched its warrant from the Prince of Wales to the King? I don't know if it's, I think potentially. So Graham Fraser is asking, I know that it was renewed in 2024 by King Charles. So I would suggest yes, because Prince of Wales, I don't know if it's, who's the new Prince of Wales once he becomes king? I'm not even sure of these things. But I know that the Royal Warrant was renewed in 2024, Graham. After a 2021 renewal, interestingly, from Queen Elizabeth. Everyone seems to be leaning towards A on this one. Okawami is saying Aqvavitae. It now says the former Prince of Wales. Ah, okay. Fantastic. Good to have you in. And thank you for your support as a barfly, Okawami. Hoyt is saying, going with a knowledgeable crowd. Okay, be careful. I have to say, Hoyt, you should be safe. There's no banana skin here. Stevie O is going against the grain and suggesting B. Jimmy Jazz is going with A. And Kyle Taylor is saying a King's warrant had to be worth more, right? I wonder. I'm not sure. I'm not really up to speed on such things, Kyle. But I can tell you that the way to work out this question would be the fact that when Glasgow Distillery came on stream in 2015, they were celebrated for being the first Glasgow malt distillery to be producing in the whisky for over a century. So that should help you. That ignores the fact that Kinclaith existed, of course, in the Strathclyde complex. But, you know, that was a distillery within a distillery, a standalone malt distillery. It was over 100 years And that's the way to navigate that question. If you answered A for 1902, you're quite correct. That was when the original 1770 Glasgow Dundas Hill distillery closed. Question 9, second from the end. Scotland can claim to have which of the following? A. Scotland can claim to have the world's oldest whisky distillery. B. Scotland can claim to have the world's largest whisky distillery. Or C. Scotland can claim to have the world's tallest whisky distillery. Banana skin here. When I talk about the world's largest whisky distillery, I'm not talking about litres per annum. I'm not talking about liquid volume. I'm speaking about literally largest, as in square feet, hectares, yards, acreage, meters, whatever you want to. I'm talking about physically the largest distillery for B there. So is it A, the world's oldest, B, the world's largest, or C, the world's tallest? The neck pour is going for C. Andrei Barteniev is saying Leith, question mark. Kel Taylor is saying sorry, C. Lachlan McKenzie is saying whiskey or whiskey. Pierre is saying doubt A and B, so I'm going for C. And then Stevie O, Nicholas, Peter Box, Mike Molasses, Jimmy Legg, Graham Young. Whiskey not. Scotch says Dave Smith. Paul Gidley is saying try C. Gene Kelly, C. Lachlan is saying C. Leith. Jimmy Legg is saying, Desi is saying C, 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 C. Just C all the way down. There is a banana skin here, but my goodness, I can't fool you. You're very, very, very clever. I thought it was a good question. Okay. Yes, don't judge me on spelling whiskey with an E or without an E. I don't want to lead anyone in any specific direction. I've kept it whiskey. It's fine. The oldest whiskey distillery is widely, that's Irish. Kilbeggan seems to have the claim to 1757 on that one. The world's largest whiskey distillery would be Fuji in Japan, and the world's tallest whiskey distillery, you're absolutely spot on, is likely to be Port of Leith in Scotland, a new distillery as well. Not released their own product yet. What times lie ahead? Okay, there's an ASHAT question at the end. Let's see how the scores are doing. Peter Box on 8 along with Tony Nelson. Nick Poor has got his pass mark already for a 6 out of 9. And the Nick Poor, I'm assuming that you're a he, but I'm grateful that you've made it over the pass mark line tonight. George Petras is celebrating an 8. Graham Fraser on a 9. Lachlan McKenzie on a 9. Dave Swift on an 8. Gene Kelly on a 9. There's 3 9s already. Kel Taylor on a 7, as well as Jimmy Legg. Daisy's on an 8. Andy Hales is on a 9. That's the 4th 9 tonight. Dave the Brave is also on a 9. Amazing. Graham Young is on a 9. 6 of you on a 9. 7 if we include Alan. George P makes it 8. Okay, there's a great chance that we could celebrate some 10 out of 10s tonight. Fantastic stuff. I actually thought that this was going to be a trickier quiz. The ASHAT at the end, I'm getting great mileage out of these. I hope you'll forgive me. I kind of love it, but let's go with it. Milling is a critical part of whisky production, but how many distilleries are there with the word mill in their name? When I say distilleries, I'm speaking about Scotch malt distilleries. About the same number of Scottish distilleries with A, Royal in the name, B, Ard in the name, or C, Ben in the name. It's a very, very long-winded way of saying how many mill distilleries are there? Is it the same as Royal distilleries, Ard distilleries, or Ben distilleries? Pierre is saying Aqvavitae assuming active distilleries. Yes, it's fair to assume. Let's say easy, let's say possible to purchase distilleries, Frank. But I like the way you think. Paul Gibbs is in. Good to see you, Paul. I'm just loving this. I can literally read you all thinking. It's wonderful. John Tankersley saying, in that case, Little Mill was throwing me off. Jimmy Legg is saying, Ben. Peter is going, A. I can tell you that I can give you some responses here that might help you a little bit, okay? Royal in the name is either 2 or 3, depending on how you want to define such a thing. Ard in the name 8, Ben in the name 4. I'm going to give you all a very, very rare thing, the ability to take 1 of 2 from the ass hat at the end. Plenty of Ard. Royal only 2. Mill we went over a while back is 4. Sugar Kitty is saying 4 for Mill. Don't forget a lesser known Ard Ben Mill distillery, says Mike Molasses. No, I think you've made a mistake there, Mike. It's Royal Ard Ben Mill. Okay, I can tell you that. Milling. The mills is Milton Duff is not one because there's only one L in Milton Duff. So we're looking at Daff Mill, Strathmill, and Eden Mill. Royal is Royal Loch Nagar, Royal Brackla, and Glenuri Royal. You're going to hate me for it because then you're going to say, well, Little Mill and all that, and you would be absolutely right. So while I'm suggesting that the answer of this is A, if you want to take a I've not. Why is that both the same slide? Okay, I should have had another slide in there. Apologies. That also lights up C for Ben and the name for 4. You can also take a point if you answered C tonight, because it could also theoretically include Little Mill and therefore become 4. I made a wee mistake. There should be another slide there. It's just I've just duplicated the slide. I don't know why. That's wild. But anyway, the answers tonight that I'm looking for is either A or C. So let's see who's managed to sneak a wee 10 out of 10 with lots of bonuses from me tonight. It was try to be generous. Andy Hills is saying a 10 out of 10, a cheeky one. Andy Hills is celebrating. Graham Young celebrating a 10 out of 10 as well. George P also got his 10 out of 10. Came in late, says Paul Gibbs. He's got 1 out of 10. That's 100% though, right, Paul? With a bit of luck at the end, says Gene Kelly, he's got a 10. Alan is celebrating a 10 at the end as well. Fantastic, Alan. Well done. Graham Fraser, few guessed the last 10 out of 10. Congrats, George P. 10. Dave the Brave answered C, switched to 8. I'll take 10 out of 10. So you got, regardless of where you went there, Dave, well done. You deserve it. Take it. Run all the way to the bank. Peter is saying if you add Little Mill, you can also add Melbourne. Oh, Frank, you're absolutely right. And there's truth in that. It still remains the nearest. A and C still stands. Good stuff. Jimmy Legg has sent 5 Aqvavitae memberships out to 5 random folks who's going to enjoy that. That's Alan Newland, Bob Wenting, Taylor Brasser, Craig Blair, and Daniel Hartman. All got a wee gift membership from our pal Jimmy Legg tonight. Thank you, Jimmy, for your generosity. Those guys can also help to keep everything ad-free and get access to the wee channel-themed emoji as well. Willie Dollar saying 8 out of 10. That'll do for me. Well done. The 10's good quiz. And Taylor actually celebrating a 10 out of 10. Listen, for the few of you that are still in tonight, thank you very much for hanging out with me till the end. Click that like button if you can, please, if you enjoyed hanging out tonight for a wee chat about the humble bourbon cask that really empowers. I think the bourbon cask is arguably the engine behind the entire Scotch whisky landscape, if I'm honest, in 2025. It's just where we find ourselves. We're very fortunate that serendipity has played a hand to give us this thing in the first place, but obviously today to still sustain us in such a place. Andy's saying, looking forward to seeing some of you wonderful barflies this weekend and next week. Then lots of you in Glasgow. Fabulous. Great vPub. Cheers. Thank you, Andy. And Jean Kelly's saying, great session. Thanks to all you and Ralphie have done to present another Oz. Was looking forward to the show on Saturday. Please remember to join us from 6 o'clock on Saturday. There's some really blockbuster guests coming along to help us celebrate as well. It's really, really cool. And there's going to be an announcement as well about the future of the Oswas and things on Saturday as well. Ralph and I are excited to welcome you all there. Dave Swift is saying, great to be in live, Aqvavitae. Thank you all. Have a great Glasgow Whisky Festival weekend. I'll see you before that weekend, though, next week. We're going out live on Thursday before the festival. Lachlan is saying, thanks, Roy and Aqvavitae. Have a great, good evening, folks. Chris Pollock, good to see you, Chris. Thanks, Roy. See you on Saturday. I'm looking forward to it, Chris. That's amazing. You join us on Saturday for the Oswas. Pete Ed is saying, with that, it's time to search for the bed. Thanks for organising Aqvavitae, and thank a lot of you. See you next week in Glasgow. Jimmy Legg is saying, am I on? If they're blockbuster guests. Well, that would have been a nice thing, actually, to get Jimmy Legg to appear on Oswas one year. It could be fun, right? Andy Hills is saying, I missed the Oswas as working, so we'll watch on replay. Andy, thank you for considering picking up on replay. And George is saying, good night all. Good night, Roy. Great vPub. Thank you all so much. I didn't prepare too much for tonight, but it's something that I love. It's something that I'm a wee bit passionate about, and I love talking about, and I'm very, very grateful to have it here as part of the landscape. It's amazing to see. I'm going to, the one that I've kept covered since the start of this evening, this is the one I'm going to take upstairs, as I mentioned to you. This is the original Loch Lomond. I have to say, I was enjoying it, the quiz, my Glasgow. I think it's a peach in more ways than one. But I'll raise this wee glass to you all. This Loch Lomond that was killed tonight, finally gone. The original Aqvavitae Barfly release. It'll just be one of these drams that just becomes better and better each time I recall it, right? But I'm going to raise it all to you. I'm looking forward to seeing you in Glasgow in about 10 days' time. I'm looking forward to seeing you and welcoming you with Ralphie on Saturday from 6 o'clock for the Oswas this weekend. But in the meantime, I'm going to thank you for everything that you've helped enable, empower, and achieve together with me. I love hanging out with you all on a Thursday night. It does genuinely feel like a wee bit of time out, like a wee break, like a wee bit of a mental health pocket of time. It's important to me. It's great. I'm very, very grateful to be able to share it with all of you. So until Saturday, and until next week, and until Glasgow, I'll raise this glass to remind you all that you're very dearly loved. And until then, Slanchava.